Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku became the new Yamato Wielder Part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see Part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story, FatedGil from Wattpad. So let's start the video. Prologue. Third person POV. It was a appealing sunny morning. The birds were singing, the light from the sun was nice and warm, and people were rising to start their days. All was quiet this early morning at the Yagi residence, until the 4-year-old greenette Izuku Yagi woke up in his all-might-themed room. As he opened his eyes, he remembered what day it was, and hurried out his door to get to his sister's room. Izumi had hair like 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏, long and blonde, but smooth like her mother 𝗵𝗃𝗃, and her eyes were blue like her father's, whereas Izuku got all of his traits from 𝗵𝗃𝗃, the green hair, green eyes, and the stubborn nature he always has. Izuku, Izumi, wake up. Today's the day. Izuku, why are you awake right? Our quirk test is today. Izuku, yeah. We have to go and wake up Mom and Dad. The twins ran into their parents' bedroom to wake them up. Due to 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏's job, they had more than enough money to afford the large house that they lived in. As Izuku and Izumi ran past the gym and the bathroom, they turned a corner to their parents' bedroom and barreled straight into 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏's legs, knocking him over. 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏, Lef. What are you two doing up so early? Izuku and Izumi, sorry Dad. We were coming to wake you and Mum up to take us to the quirk test today. 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏, that was today wasn't it? He mused. Well, tell me what your quirks are when you get back. 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏 seemed to be disappointed and in a rush. Izuku, aren't you coming with us? 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏, sorry little Izuku, but work calls. Izumi, it's okay Dad. We'll tell you about our quirks when you get home. Izuku, yeah. 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏, all right then little ones, I should be back by 4 o'clock. After 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏 got back up and walked off, Izuku and Izumi ran to their mother and woke her up, reminding her that the quirk test was today. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, well then, you two better get dressed while I make breakfast. Izuku and Izumi then rushed back to their respective rooms to get ready, whilst 𝗵𝗃𝗃 went to the kitchen to cook their breakfast. 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏 must have been called to deal with a villain, thought 𝗵𝗃𝗃. He was almost as excited as the kids for this. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 chuckled to herself at the memory of an excited 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏. Sigh Izuku, 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏. Doctor, sorry kid, but you're quirkless. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, who was standing within Izuku's view, had a mixture of sadness and disappointment on her face. Izuku, seeing this, felt betrayed, his own mother, disappointed in him about something he couldn't control. He was snapped out of his angered state when he felt his sister's hand on his shoulder. Putting on a big smile, Izuku complimented her on her new quirk. Izuku, your telekinesis quirk sounds powerful sis, you'll definitely be the next #1 hero. As the Yagi family drove home, Izuku was looking out the window the whole time, ignoring the conversation going on between Izumi and 𝗵𝗃𝗃. Izuku just wished he had more power. 4 o'clock rolled around and 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏 returned home to see that both of his kids were sitting on the couch waiting for him, Izumi with a look of excitement, Izuku less so. Seeing as they hadn't heard him enter, 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏 decided to sneak up on them. 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏, well if it isn't my two favorite children, do you want to tell your dad about your quirks? Izumi, Dad. You're home. 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏, yes I am little Izumi, now, what quirk did you get? Izumi, I got a stronger form of mother's quirk. 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏, amazing Izumi, now Izuku, what quirk did you get? Izuku. 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏 was confused by Izuku's lack of response, until Izumi spoke up. Izumi, Izuku's quirkless? Out of the corner of his eye, Izuku saw the same thing yet again. 𝗬𝗬𝗧𝗏 had the same look that 𝗵𝗃𝗃 had at the doctor's office. Sadness and disappointment. Izuku got up and stormed to his room, locked the door and flung himself onto his bed, drifting off to sleep wishing he had more power to prove his parents wrong. Sigh Izuku woke up to the sound of knocking on his door. He walked over to the door, unlocked it and pulled it open a crack, only to see Izumi's concerned face. Opening the door all the way, Izuku allowed his sister into the room. She came in with a plate of food. Izuku, I brought you dinner. Izuku, what? They didn't even come and get me for dinner. Izumi, they acted like you didn't exist. Why are they like this? Izuku, probably because they wanted to have children who could be heroes. They would even betray my faith in them. Izumi then wrapped him in a hug and promised him that she would never betray him. He was her brother after all, and she would never betray him. Time skip. Next day, school, lunch, Shoto. Izumi, what quirk did you get? Izumi, I got a stronger form of my mother's telekinesis quirk. Izumi was having a conversation with the Todoroki and Bakugo twins about their new quirks. Shoto Todoroki had half white and half red hair like his sister, where Shoto's red hair was on his left side, Shoka's was on the right. They both had a half hot half cold quirk. Shoto's was more powerful whereas Shoka's was more versatile, able to be controlled to the finest detail, but less powerful than Shoto's. The Bakugo twins, loud and often unpleasant, both had sandy blonde hair, with explosive quirks to match their attitudes. Katsuki could set off explosions from his hands using his nitroglycerin sweat, whereas Katsumi could set off explosions off from anywhere on her body, allowing for more unique ways of using her quirk. Shoka, Izumi, what were you muttering about? Izumi, oh, nothing Shoka. Your quirks are so amazing, having a mixed quirk is so rare. Shoka, what quirk did Izuku get? Shoto, speaking of Izuku, where is he? Izumi, Izuku he's quirkless? Izumi's face fell as she remembered the way her parents almost forgot to wake up Izuku and take him to school this morning. Izumi, I think he's over by that tree. He's probably still upset about yesterday. Shoto, that must be why he avoided me in class today. Does he still want to be a hero? Izumi's silence spoke volumes. They were thinking about how they didn't want their friend to get hurt while aspiring to be a hero. The silence was broken by Katsuki, who had a massive grin on his face. Katsuki, none of you want him to get hurt whilst trying to be a hero, do you? I have an idea of how to fix that. Izumi, how? Katsuki, why don't we bully him with our quirks to make him afraid of them and getting hurt so that he wouldn't want to be a hero anymore? Katsumi, that's an excellent idea, brother. Izumi, no. That's horrible, Katsuki. Izumi, Shoto and Shoka glared at Katsuki and Katsumi with anger and bewilderment. Shoto, what are you even thinking? How dense are you? Shoka, yeah, we should be protecting, not traumatizing him. Katsuki, tch whatever. You would stick with that useless, quirkless, det. Katsumi, hey, that's a good name for the quirkless 𝗵𝗃. Izumi, what is wrong with you guys? He's not useless or a bee. POV. Izuku Izumi's raised voice caught my attention. She never shouts like that, I thought as I walked over to see what the fuss was all about. I saw Kaken push past my sister and the Todoroki twins making a beeline for me. Just as I was about to ask what was happening, Kaken set off an explosion in my face, blasting me back onto the ground. Kaken, useless Deku. Why do you still want to be a hero? You don't even have a quirk. 𝗔𝗵𝗃. Why are you doing this, Kaken? Katsumi. Because you don't deserve to be a hero, seeing as you're quirkless? That. Just as Kaken raised his arm to set off another explosion, the air got colder, and Kaken and Katsumi were covered from neck down with ice. Shoto, leave him alone. Kaken, he's fine. Shoto and Shoka then released Kaken and Katsumi from the ice. I watched them walk off angrily. My friends and sister ran over to check on me as I slowly drifted into unconsciousness from the concussion I had from the explosion and hitting my head on the floor. POV. Third-person Gil. Little did poor Izuku know, this was only the beginning of the abuse and trauma he would receive from the Bakugo twins. Gil, sigh, I hate this school. And, agreed. Izuku was basically tortured here, and the teachers did nothing. Gil, enjoy the new chapter. What's that alarm? Beep, beep, beep. Another early morning for young Izuku, now 14 years of age, as he sits up in bed, his arms and back screaming out in pain. Demon Bakugo twins and their quirks. Now I'm in pain all over whenever I move. These explosion injuries take a while to heal. Izuku was snapped out of his muttering by his still beeping alarm. Beep, 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 beep. Izuku, better get ready before everyone else wakes up. After stopping his alarm, Izuku moves to freshen up and gets dressed in his 𝗓𝗓𝗓 uniform. He moves quietly past his parents' room so as to not wake them up and goes down to the kitchen to make a smoothie. Turning on the lights, he pulls out a blender and grabs an assortment of berries from the fridge. Cup Swiss chard. 1/4 beetroot. Half a cup blueberries, frozen. Half a cup strawberries, frozen. Half a cup water. 1 cup coconut water. 1 tablespoon almond butter, no added salt. 1/2 tablespoon cacao powder. Muttering to himself as he puts the ingredients into the blender. Gil, if you want the recipe yourself, here's the link, https://www.𝗵/recipe/2063/𝗵𝗿𝗺𝗺/ After pouring the smoothie into the cup, he makes a second one for Izumi. Izumi then walked down the stairs into the kitchen just as Izuku finished pouring the smoothie. He looked up, seeing Izumi. Izuku put a grin on his face, hiding the pain in his joints and muscles, passing her the drink and her bag. Surprised, Izumi took her bag and the smoothie as the two went to walk to school. Sai Shoka, morning, Izuku, Izumi. Izuku, morning you too. Izumi, good morning Shoka, Shoto. Shoto, morning. Izumi, Shoto. You sound like a zombie. Shoto, yeah, I was up training all night. Izuku, at least Endeavor is no longer isolating you from the others. Shoto, yeah, thanks again for that Izuku. They all giggled remembering how Izuku managed to get Endeavor to warm up to him by following him around all day, constantly asking for his autograph. He also managed to make Enji and Rei become aunts and uncles, due to how close the Yagi twins were to the Todoroki twins. The full family includes the Todoroki and Bakugo family, as well as Principal Nizu, who had a real liking to the broccoli boy after Nizu came to Aldra to look through the students to see how many were planning to apply for UA. Izuku's quirk analysis books caught Nizu's attention because of how in-depth they were. Not only did it show what the quirk was and how it works, it also had the advantages and disadvantages of the quirk and its user. Izuku, teacher, but why bother, you all want to go down the hero path. I must have dozed off. The teacher is talking about what we want to do in the future. Katsuki, don't lump us in with the rest of these extras, teach? Katsumi, yeah, these guys would be lucky to end up as a sidekick to a busted D-lister. Katsuki, especially that useless Deku. Katsuki said this whilst setting off explosions in his hand, making me flinch. All the students were complaining about the Bakugo twins' attitude and cockiness, until the teacher spoke up. Teacher, oh yes, you two are going to UA, aren't you? Everyone's jaw dropped at this revelation. UA was the national school, and had such a high entry bar. I knew what was coming next. Teacher, come to think of it, 6 of you want to go to UA. Shoto, Shoka, Katsuki, Katsumi, Izumi, and Izuku's Katsuki, Deku. You have no quirk. How do you expect to get into UA? Izuku, it's been my dream to get into UA, and they abolished the rule about quirks a while back. Boom, I was flung into a wall from the force of Katsuki's explosion. Izumi, what are you doing? Katsuki got up in my sister's face. Katsuki, I'm showing that quirkless reject his place. The air around us got significantly colder, the telltale sign of the Todoroki twins' quirk. Before anything could happen, the final bell rang. Katsuki, he's whatever. Everyone else started to leave the classroom, but the teacher told me to stay behind and clean up the messy classroom. I told my friends to wait outside for me because I wouldn't be that long. Oh, how wrong I am. An explosion went off behind me and I flinched at the sound, as if I knew what was coming next. Another explosion went off and this one hit me, and yet again, I was flung into a wall. Katsuki, you think you're better than us, Deku? Katsumi, you think you can get into UA? They didn't let me reply, they started torturing me with their quirk. From the constant torturing from when I was 4, I had an overly high pain tolerance. But even that has its limits. Izumi POV, I heard a scream coming from the school. I turned to look at Shoto, who had already turned and ran towards the noise. Shoka and I followed suit. Hearing explosions coming from the classroom, we hurriedly opened the door. Oh, the horror we saw. Izuku was curled in the corner in the fetal position, bleeding all over while Katsuki and Katsumi tortured him with their quirks. Hearing us enter, Katsuki picked up Izuku by the arm and threw him at us like a sack of potatoes. As he was thrown, we heard a loud pop, and a small whine of pain came from Izuku. I used my telekinesis power to put him down gently. Katsuki, I've already had my fun for today, but I have some wisdom on how to get you a quirk, Deku. Izuku looked hopeful. Katsuki, take a swan dive off the roof, and hope for a quirk in your next life. Before the Bakugo twins could even react, the entire classroom froze and they were trapped up to their necks in ice. I sensed pure malice emanating from the Todoroki twins. Shoto, 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗂𝗍𝗔𝗍𝗔𝗍. Shoto, calm down. I had to stop them before they burned down the whole building, as both of their firesides had started to flare. Izuku, I'm fine. Calm down, you two. The twins stopped and turned to care for Izuku, which allowed Katsumi to break out by setting an explosion off above where the ice was. Then she freed Katsuki and they both ran off. Izuku stood up and I almost threw up. His right shoulder was dislocated. He then turned and ran shoulder first into a wall. With a loud pop and a sigh of relief, Izuku slid down the wall. Shoka, how does that not hurt? Izuku didn't answer, he just ripped his already torn shirt off, showing us all the explosion scars he had all over his body. I was horrified, there was even one in the shape of a hand on his sternum. He then pulled out some first aid gear from his bag and started to patch himself up. Shoto, I swear, I'm gonna kill that son of a 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗍, Shoka slapped him before he could finish the thought. I looked over at Izuku, whose eyes no longer had that happy, joyous light in them. Now they just looked on with hate and despair. Izuku, come here. I embrace my brother, I feel him shaking in my arms. Feel my shirt getting wet as he starts crying, finally letting out all of that pent-up anger and sadness. He started shouting loudly into my ear, Izuku, curse you, Katsuki, Katsumi. We didn't move for a while. Shoto and Shota joined the hug. Izuku just stayed still, sobbing for a few minutes before we all left. I kept my arm around my brother as we walked home. I turned to look at him, and I saw him staring at the devil forest, then he mouthed one word. 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗂𝗧𝗏, third POV. Izuku had told them everything. The 10 years of torture. Constant verbal and mental abuse. Realization dawned on Izumi's face, realizing why Izuku always flinched whenever explosions went off in the movies or hero videos they watched. PTSD. Gil, sadly. Izumi watched as Izuku climbed onto the roof and silently entered his room through the window as he still didn't have a shirt. Izumi walked through the front door and saw her dumbass father Toshinori standing there with a huge grin on his face. Toshinori, it's time for me to tell you what I do for a living. Izumi, what do you do for a living, Dad? The room started to fill with smoke and Izumi could no longer see her father. Once the smoke dissipated, Izumi was shocked at the sight she saw. All Might. I am here, young Izumi. All Mights? All Might, that's right, daughter. It is I, All Might, the #1 hero in Japan. Izumi was shocked. How could All Might of all people be a neglectful parent? She suddenly felt worried about what would happen if Izuku found out. All Might, I am telling you this today so you can inherit my quirk, one for all. Izumi, one for all. Wait, inherit? All Might. Correct, my quirk has been passed down generations. All Might proceeded to give the explanation of OFA to Izumi. Izumi, why don't you give the quirk to Izuku? All Might, because Izuku doesn't have the true heart of a hero. He what? Izuku's 100 times more heroic than you. All Might. Izumi, let me think about this overnight. This is a big decision. All Might, all right Izumi. All Might shrunk back to his skinny form and they met Inko for dinner. Izumi kept trying to remind them about Izuku, to no avail. After dinner, Izumi walked up the stairs to head to her bedroom, when she saw him standing there, face red with rage. Izumi hugged her brother, telling him that she will convince Toshinori to give him the quirk instead of her. Izuku pulled away and held her at arm's length. Izuku, no Izumi, I have a plan to gain a quirk anyway, and I don't need help from but Might of all people. Izumi, Izuku. Don't do it. Don't think for a second they were right. Izuku, no, that's not what I mean. Izuku told Izumi about the presence calling to him from the Devil Forest, a forest they always pass on the way home. It told him it had the power he was wishing for. He would have to pass the forest's test first. Izuku, I'm going after those sorry excuses for my parents go to sleep. I'm going to tell Uncle Nizu about this, as well as ask if he can give me a temporary residence somewhere. I will call you to catch up with you. But the next time I see you will be at the UA entrance exams. Izumi, all right Izuku. Just wake me up before you go, so I can say goodbye. I will. Izuku had a sinister smile on his face, as if he was planning something. After hugging her brother again, Izumi changed and went to sleep. She woke up to the sound of collectible figures being smashed with a baseball bat. Izumi rushed into Izuku's room seeing all the All Might posters ripped down and figures smashed everywhere, where the words power had been drawn all over his walls with red marker. Izuku, Izumi, I see you heard my wake-up call. Nizu has booked an apartment for me for 10 months, so I am now able to leave this hellhole. Then when we get into UA, we will be staying in the dorms provided. Izumi, did you have to cause this destruction? Izuku shrugged, needed to get my anger out one way or the other. He walked forward and hugged Izumi, saying goodbye. Izuku, I'll see you in 10 months at the UA entrance exam, okay? Promise me. A tearful Izumi replies, I promise you brother. See you in 10 months. Izuku walked to the window and opened it. Izuku, there is a letter on my desk explaining everything. When Nizu and Detective 𝗧𝗍𝗄𝐺 come over in 3 days, use some excuse like, where is Izuku, then come in here and call the others to come see. This will help be proof. Izuku hopped out the window and walked down the street, waving at Izumi. Izuku POV, I finally fully realized what a line from my favorite song meant. Izuku, cast aside, there's no coming home. When you're happy, you enjoy the song, and when you're sad, you understand the lyrics. I walked into the forest and stopped, sensing a demonic energy emitting from the center of the forest. Walking towards it, I slipped on a patch of moss and fell on my face, just as a log trap flew over my head. This must be what they meant by the test. I thought to myself. I kept walking towards the center of the forest until I entered a clearing. Seeing that there was nothing in the clearing, I was confused, until I felt the demonic energy was much stronger further south from my current position. I pushed forward, jumping over spike pits, dodging log traps and knife traps. The traps are getting more dangerous and common, that must mean I'm getting closer. I thought to myself. I dodged another log trap and jumped over another spike pit, then there was nothing. No more traps. Then I saw it laying there on a rock. A huge grin broke out on my face. Izuku, Yamato. What do you mean the whole building is on fire? How is this possible? Gil, well, enjoy this new chapter while I sort out this problem with my friend, management. Gil picks up his phone and dials a number. Gil, yes, sorry for calling this early, someone set my work building on fire, get here when you can. Last time, Izuku POV, I walked into the forest and stopped, sensing a demonic energy emitting from the center of the forest. Walking towards it, I slipped on a patch of moss and fell on my face, just as a log trap flew over my head. This must be what they meant by the test. I thought to myself. I kept walking towards the center of the forest until I entered a clearing. Seeing that there was nothing in the clearing, I was confused, until I felt the demonic energy was much stronger further south from my current position. I pushed forward, jumping over spike pits, dodging log traps and knife traps. The traps are getting more dangerous and common, that must mean I'm getting closer. I thought to myself. I dodged another log trap and jumped over another spike pit, then there was nothing. No more traps. Then I saw it laying there on a rock. A huge grin broke out on my face. Izuku, Yamato. Now, Izuku POV, I walked up to the Yamato, hearing it calling to me. I touched the sheath, then jumped back as 2 apparitions appeared in front of me. One was a 6 feet 5 inches, 196 centimeters, tall male, with white slicked back hair, wearing a long, silver-buttoned black coat with light neon blue serpentine patterns and 3 separated coattails with slightly tattered edges. Under this coat, a black sleeveless zippered turtleneck beneath his midnight blue formal vest. He was also wearing charcoal gray fingerless gloves, black and dark boots covered by teal gaiters. The name popped into his head, as if it was always there. Virgil. The other person next to Virgil was wearing a simple blue dress and had long white hair down to her waist. She was the spirit of the Yamato. Virgil, this one. Yamato, yes Virgil. Virgil, he doesn't look like much Yamato. Virgil? He has a drive for power that is equal, if not greater, than yours. Virgil, 𝗵𝗃𝗃. Kid, I have a question for you. What is your favorite drink? I was snapped out of my stupor by this question. Izuku, the berry delight smoothie. Virgil, well, that's convinced me. Yamato, of course that's what would convince you. Virgil, what? I told you it's the best drink ever made. I walked past the two, who were still arguing about the best drink, and picked up the Yamato. The sword, not the woman. I walked back remembering the stories of what happened years ago. Virgil split himself into two parts, a demon and a human. The human's name was V, and the demon was known as Demon King 𝗲𝗚. A part of Virgil's soul must have been tethered to this sword. After Nero, Virgil's son, beat him, he and Dante entered the demon realm to cut down the 𝗵𝗃𝗃 tree. Dante managed to escape, but Virgil didn't make it out. Before he died, Virgil threw the Yamato to Dante so he could escape. Virgil, what are you muttering about, kid? Izuku, nothing. But I have a request. Virgil, now I'm intrigued. Izuku, could you two teach me how to use the Yamato? Virgil looked over to Yamato, who gave an approving nod, then looked back at me. Virgil, kid, I'm gonna have to merge my soul with yours if you want to even wield that sword. But it will be painful and your personality will change entirely, for the most part. Are you willing to go through with that? Izuku, pain is easy. I accept your terms, Virgil. Virgil, all right kid, after this transformation is finished, you will be half human and half demon. He walked forwards with his arms outstretched, as if calling to some higher being. Virgil, Sparta, accept my new successor, the one who will climb to the top. Izuku Yagi, do you cast aside your former name to become Izuku Sparta? Izuku, I do. Virgil, welcome to the family. Virgil then turned into blue essence and flowed into 𝗵𝗃𝗃. I looked up at Yamato, and she had a worried look on her face. I was confused until the pain kicked in, third-person POV. Izuku fell to the ground, writhing around and screaming, as his cells were forcibly changed around to fit with the new physiology he was given by Virgil. This pain was much worse than the Bakugo twins had ever given him. Yamato looked at her dress as it changed from blue to green. Then the pain cut off. Izuku stood up slowly, breathing heavily. He picked up the Yamato and allowed it to fade into his soul. The spirit of the Yamato followed Izuku out of the forest, and to an apartment that Nizu had provided for Izuku. Izuku Sparta, so, we have 10 months until the UA entrance exam. What can I learn in that short of time, Yamato? Yamato, everything. You have all of Virgil's memories, so all we need to do is some practical learning, and some physical strength training. Just so you can get some practice in with your new strength. Izuku, alright, I'm going to sleep now. I know a spot we could go for that, the 𝗃𝗃𝗃 Municipal Beach Park. There is so much garbage around that no one will see us. Wait, can people actually see you? Or only me? Yamato, no, only you and descendants of Virgil's can see me. Come to think of it, one of Virgil's descendants is planning on going to UA. Izuku, well, I hope to see them there. Good night, Yamato. Yamato, good night, Izuku. I'll warn you of people approaching. Izuku, thanks Yama. He fell asleep before being able to finish thanking Yamato. She smiled, this young boy, he was stronger and smarter than Virgil. So strong, in fact, that he forcibly changed the natural blue color of the Yamato to green. Yamato chuckled to herself. This is going to be fun, she thought. Izuku stood up and wandered into the bathroom to get ready to go out to train. He summoned the Yamato sword to his hand and was surprised how it changed his outfit when he summoned it. Gil, minus those gauntlets, just imagine he has dark green fingerless driver's gloves on. Izuku, I like it. He saw some hair gel on the table in the bathroom. Ah, what the hell, why not, thought Izuku. Picking up the hair gel, Izuku styled his hair so that it had a similar look to Virgil's. Yamato, I like it. Izuku, thanks, Yamato. Now let's go to training. Yamato, all right, off to the beach? They walked out of the apartment and in the direction of the beach. People were staring at Izuku due to his slightly unusual getup and the sword he was carrying. Izuku didn't mind the attention. He walked with his head held high, proud of his new costume. The beach was a sight to behold, and not for good reasons. The whole beach was littered with different types of garbage. The smallest being paper bags, and the biggest being cars. Izuku, these scum, leaving their trash on this beach? Yamato, you're reminding me of Virgil more and more. Izuku nodded his head and jumped down into an open area and drew the Yamato from its sheath, and started some basic moves with it. Normal slashes to begin with, then some moves infused with demonic energy. First, Judgment Cut. Yamato, a versatile and powerful move, great for ending combos with, or for keeping enemies away. Then Izuku trained with his Mirage Blades, shooting small green energy knives from thin air. These allowed him to teleport to any enemy that the blade got lodged in. Izuku really liked the idea of teleporting behind his enemies. Yamato, now for your special move, Judgment Cut, and Izuku, right? Let's do this, I'm feeling really motivated by all this new power. Izuku, Judgment Cut, end performing a bunch of rapid slashes, seeming to fracture reality, before returning to where he was standing and sheathing Yamato. Before he could say anything, Izuku heard a voice he never wished to hear again. All Might, stop right there. Who are you? Izuku just stood there, his back facing his father, before he jumped off from the beach and onto the path, before running away from All Might. All Might, I said stop. Giving chase, All Might eventually caught up with Izuku at the edge of the forest, before Izuku drew Yamato, slashing the air making a plus mark in reality, before turning slightly to look at All Might and walking through the portal, which closed after he crossed the threshold. Izumi POV. Izumi followed All Might, who was chasing after this man in a green suit. Wondering who he is, she caught up at the edge of the forest, seeing the man stop, slash the air to open a portal, and turn slightly. Izumi gasped at the sight of her brother, but she could do nothing as she watched her brother walk through the portal, reality closing behind him. All Might, that boy looked familiar. I stared at him blankly. How could he forget his own son? Even with his new hairstyle, he still had the same face, but there was more confidence in the way he held himself. As we walked back to the beach, All Might told me about how I needed to train my body to be able to use OFA to its fullest potential. He marked out a section of the beach for me to clean before the UA entrance exam. Izuku POV. As I walked out through the Devil Forest, I bumped into a girl, a head shorter than me with shoulder length, pure white hair. Blue eyes just like his. I found your great-granddaughter, Virgil. Izuku, sorry, are you okay? Girl, Wyatt. Izuku, you looked lost, do you need help? Girl, yes. Mister, I ran away from home. No one accepts my quirk. My grandfather accepts it, but people at school say it's villainous and my parents don't want me to go to UA and become a hero. Izuku, I was neglected by my parents because I was quirkless, so I ran away like you have. The name's Izuku 𝗧𝗵𝗲 by the way, what's yours? Girl, 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Izuku, yes, 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Girl, my name is Hanako 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Hanako had started backing away from me. She must have thought I was related to Dante. Izuku, not by BLD, but by succession. I summoned the Yamato to my hand and the spirit of the Yamato appeared behind me, watching the girl. Hanako, wait. That's Yamato. You mean to tell me that you are my great-grandfather's successor? Izuku, correct? I walked towards the excited girl. I put my arm on her shoulder and told her that I had an apartment with a spare bed if she needed a place to stay the night. Before I could take her there, I heard the sound of RBB screeching on bitumen. Looking up, I was blinded by the headlights of an SUV flying towards us at top speed. Izuku, doppelganger. I summoned Doppelganger in his full form as I rushed forwards and tackled Hanako out of the way of the speeding car. As we fell to the ground, I heard the horrible sound of a car crunching. Doppelganger had gone to pull people out of the car, but all he found was a brick on the accelerator and some exposed wires. I finally realized that I was still laying over Hanako, so I got up and offered her my hand. Izuku, are you okay? Hanako wrapped her arms around me. I could feel how much she was shaking. Izuku, it's okay, Hanako. I'll protect you. Once Hanako came back to her senses, I went over to the wreck to see what happened. Doppelganger returned to my soul as I looked at the brick on the accelerator and the obviously hot-wired engine. I turned to Hanako and offered my hand to her again. She didn't let go until we got to my apartment, where she explained to me how her quirk works. Hanako, it's called 𝗘𝗧𝗟𝗃. It allows me to change forms into a more demonic look, but it gives a massive strength and speed boost, but I can only use it for 10 minutes at a time as it saps a lot of stamina, so it's practically useless. Izuku, that's such an amazing quirk. The stamina is a problem though, so I recommend you do more stamina training to increase it, as well as general strength training, as your quirk boosts your normal strength. Another thing you could do is push the limits of how long you can use the quirk, so go past your limit to try and decrease the stamina used. The more you use it, the less stamina it will use up. I had realized that I had started rambling again. I looked to see what her reaction was, and she had the cutest grin I had ever seen. After profusely apologizing for rambling on, with her telling me that it was okay, I showed her to her room, in which she went to sleep almost immediately. With a smile on my face, I walked to my room, turned off the light and went to sleep. Third-person POV. The next day, Izuku was awoken by the smell of bacon being cooked. He got out of his bed and put a shirt on to hide his scars from Hanako. Izuku then opened the door to his room. Izuku, ooh, what's this wonderful smell? Hanako, bacon, egg and cheese sandwiches? There was a knock at the door. Izuku went to it, knowing that only one person knew where he was. He opened the door, and was greeted by none other than Principal 𝗍𝗬. Izuku, Uncle 𝗍𝗬, please come in. Hanako, did you say 𝗍𝗬? Wait, Uncle? 𝗍𝗬, who's this new guest? Izuku. Izuku, pardon my rudeness, this is Hanako 𝗧𝗵𝗃, a new friend of mine. I met her last night after she ran from her home. Hanako, he saved me from a rogue SUV last night. I'd hardly call that meeting someone. 𝗍𝗬, Izuku, as heroic as always. Anyway, I came to visit so I could get you to sign these papers that will be offered to your parents tomorrow. As Izuku signed the papers and returned them to 𝗍𝗬, Hanako brought out some tea for all of them to drink. The tea was the best that Izuku had tasted. Even 𝗍𝗬 was surprised by how good the tea was. Before 𝗍𝗬 left, he imparted some info to Hanako. 𝗍𝗬, Izuku is the best quirk analyst I have ever seen. He's probably told you some ways of bettering your quirk already. He will definitely help you get stronger. That boy has a heart of gold, I tell you. After 𝗍𝗬 left, Izuku and Hanako had breakfast. Izuku chose this moment to tell her of his plans for today. Izuku, so, Hanako, today we are going to go to the Devil Forest so I can see firsthand how your quirk works? Hanako, alright, what are we going to do though? Izuku, we're going to do some sparring. Izuku and Hanako went to their respective rooms to get changed. Izuku walked away from the front door. Hanako, confused, followed him, until Izuku opened a portal with Yamato. Izuku, follow me. Hanako followed Izuku. The portal was cold and dark. The pair appeared in the Devil Forest. Izuku then summoned the spirit of the Yamato. Hanako was surprised at seeing the spirit again. Realizing who the spirit was, she got excited. Once Izuku finished questioning the spirit, he turned to Hanako. Izuku, alright, I want you to fight me as if I was an enemy. Activate your devil trigger. Hanako, I don't want to hurt you, I can't control my quirk. Izuku just smiled reassuringly. Izuku, well then, let's see if you can beat me without your devil trigger. Izuku then moved into a crouched fighting stance. Hanako, still unsure about his strength, rushed forwards with a jumping kick, only for Izuku to easily deflect it and pin her to the ground. Izuku let go of her and Hanako stood up. Izuku, see what I mean? Now come at me with full force. Hanako rushed forwards at full speed, feinting a high punch, whilst throwing a real punch at Izuku's midsection. He stopped it. Izuku, nice one, but I want you to use your devil trigger now. Hanako, humph, fine. Hanako activated her devil trigger. When he saw this, a huge grin broke out on Izuku's face. Izuku POV, She moved at blinding speeds. Hearing a small crunch behind me, I ducked under a sudden kick. I was running on pure instinct at this point. I spun around from my crouched position to try and sweep her legs out from under her, but she was already out of range. She rushed at me with that blinding speed again, so I decided to match her speed. She appeared behind me, then I moved behind her. She suddenly whipped around and threw a punch that I barely managed to block in time. Izuku, now I'm a little motivated. Summoning the Yamato to my hand, I shot a mirage blade at her, which she caught, but my plan was never to hit her. Teleporting to her, I grabbed the arm that she was using to hold the mirage blade and spun her around, before letting go. I watched her fly for a bit, before teleporting behind her and catching her before she flew into the tree. Izuku, now that was fun. The two kept training like this for the whole day, sparring for 10 minutes at a time, with a half-hour break between each bout. By the end of the day, Hanako's time limit for her devil trigger had increased to 15 minutes. Izuku had started to sweat by the end of their training session, whereas Hanako was drenched in sweat. Izuku opened a portal with Yamato that led back to the apartment. I let Hanako use the shower first, seeing as she was drenched in sweat from the constant use of her devil trigger. I took off my shirt as it was a little damp with sweat, then moved to the kitchen to start cooking dinner. I heard the bathroom door creak open. I felt fear, realizing that I didn't have my shirt on. I rushed to my room until I heard her voice. Hanako, Izuku, stop. I sighed in defeat and turned around to face her, showing my scars in full. Hanako, oh my god. What happened? She rushed towards me to get a better look at my scars, her face showing nothing but concern. I stood still whilst she walked around, inspecting all of my scars. Some of my torso was still covered with bandages due to the torture I had gotten a few days earlier. I decided to tell her everything. All the torture I had gone through, and everything that was said to me. By the end of the story, I had started to tear up again. Once I had finished the story, I broke down. Hanako just wrapped her arms around me and held me until I finally stopped crying. Izuku, thank you Hanako. I'm glad that I have found another person I can trust. Hanako, I'm glad you trust me, Izuku. Hanako had whispered something at the end of that sentence, but I didn't hear it. When I asked her what she said, she just blushed and turned away. I smiled at this. Then we had dinner while chatting about the progress we had made today. Hanako, I can't believe it, I actually managed to go 15 minutes before my stamina ran out. Izuku, how about we make a goal? Hanako, what will the goal be? Izuku, how about we try to get to 2 hours by the UA entrance exam? Hanako, that sounds a bit difficult, but I'll give it a try. Izuku, as a wise man once said, do or do not, there is no try. We are going to get your limit to 2 hours, Hanako. Hanako, all right, 𝗧𝗵𝗃. I will get to 2 hours before the UA entrance exam. Izuku, now that's the spirit. After some more chatting, we went to bed, both of us tired from the day of training. Hanako more so than I. The next day, 8 a.m., third-person POV. Izuku woke up to silence. Hanako must still be asleep. Poor thing, she must be drained from yesterday's training. Izuku thought as he got up and got dressed. He walked into the kitchen, then was surprised by a knock at the door. That's strange, 𝗍𝗳 wouldn't be coming by today as he is getting ready for dinner later. Izuku walked to the door and opened it. Standing there was an elderly gentleman, in his late 70s, early 80s. Izuku felt a familiar aura emanating from him. Is Hanako here? Izuku, yes, she is here Mr. Nero. Nero, please just call me Nero, young Izuku. Warning bells rung in Izuku's head. He turned back to Nero and summoned Yamato. Nero only raised his hand to stop him. Nero, Lady Yamato told me of you, young Izuku. Izuku, okay, I'll go wake her up. Returning Yamato to his soul, Izuku turned back into his apartment and walked over to Hanako's room. Izuku, make yourself at home, Nero. Izuku knocked on Hanako's door. Izuku, there's a visitor for you. Goes by the name of Nero. Izuku heard Hanako getting dressed in her room. He walked to the kitchen to make some tea for them all. Hanako rushed out of her room and straight to Nero. Hanako, Grandpa Nero. How did you find us? Nero, I tracked the demonic energy of your devil trigger and this boy's sword told me. Hanako, neat. Nero, I just wanted to check that you were okay, and check who you were staying with. Hanako, Izuku is so kind and helpful, he saved me from a rogue car. Nero, did he now? Hanako, yeah he did. Also he's very cute. Izuku, I can hear you from here. Hanako. Izuku walked out with the tea, blushing slightly, whereas Hanako was red in the face. Nero was laughing at her reaction. Nero, young love, such a appealing thing. Hanako, www. This caused both Nero and Izuku to start laughing. Hanako just got redder and redder. Hanako quietly, stop teasing me guys. Izuku walked up to her, placed a hand on her head, and gave her the teacup. Izuku, you're so cute when you are flustered. This brought out another laugh from Nero, and caused Hanako to widen her eyes and blush even more. The three got acquainted over the rest of the day. Izuku explains how he got the Yamato and how he met Hanako. Nero told stories of the time he was a part of the devil hunter group called 𝗬𝗍𝗲𝗄. Nero stayed until dinner. Izuku had a look of awe on his face at hearing all of the stories that Nero had told. After Nero had left, Lady Yamato appeared and told Izuku something. Yamato, I'm going to have to fuse with you like Virgil did. That way you can unlock all of your weapons and your Sin Devil trigger. Izuku, alright Yamato, it's been fun. I'm ready. Lady Yamato then turned into green energy and floated towards Izuku's teach. When she fused with him, Izuku felt nothing. Then suddenly, pain. More pain than when Virgil fused with him. Izuku fell to the floor, screaming at the top of his lungs, rolling around in pain, unable to find solace from this pain. Hanako rushed out to see what was wrong, but she could do nothing. 10 minutes later, the pain stopped. Hanako, Izuku, what happened? Are you okay? Izuku weakly, I'm okay Hanako, I just fused my soul with Lady Yamato's. Hanako then carried Izuku to his room and placed him on his bed, hoping that he was okay. Izuku had already fallen asleep in her arms due to the fatigue. Hanako ran her hand through his hair. Hanako, good night Izuku. You won't hear this, but I love you. Hanako left Izuku's room to return to hers to sleep. Management, what's going on here? Gil, someone set the work building on fire. Management, alright, I'll find who did it. You guys can use my house to post these stories until I find more accommodation for you. Gil, thanks Mana, you're a lifesaver. Management blushing. I told you not to call me that. Gil, alright, Mana. Anyway guys, enjoy the new chapter. Third person POV, Inko, Izumi. Are you ready yet? The guests are almost here. Izumi, yes mother, I'm coming out now. Izumi walked downstairs and went to the kitchen, passing Inko and Toshinori. Izumi, so, who's coming tonight mum? Inko, 𝗍𝗍 and his +1, Mitsuki and her kids, Enji and his kids. Izumi, who is Uncle 𝗍𝗍's +1? Toshinori, he didn't tell us, he said it was a surprise. Toshinori shuddered at the thought of who this surprise person could be. It wasn't long before a knock was heard at the door. Izumi, I'll get it. As Izumi opened the door, she was greeted by the sight of Principal 𝗍𝗍 on the shoulder of who she could only assume to be Detective 𝗧𝗍𝗁 𝗍𝗍. MIA dog. MIA mouse. MIA bear. That's up to you. But I'm 𝗍𝗍. Izumi, hello Uncle 𝗍𝗍, and you must be 𝗍𝗍's +1 Mr. 𝗧𝗍𝗁, the name is 𝗧𝗍𝗁, Naomasa 𝗧𝗍𝗁. Izumi, hello Mr. 𝗧𝗍𝗁, please come inside, both of you, the dining room is just through there. Soon, all the guests had arrived for the dinner, but a couple of people noticed something was a bit off. The Todoroki twins were the first to voice their concerns. Shoto, aren't we forgetting someone? Shoka, yeah, where's Izuku? Toshinori, he must be in his room still, you can go get him. Izumi, Shoto and Shoka all got up and went to Izuku's room. Opening the door, Shoto and Shoka couldn't see through the darkness, but when they turned on the light, they gasped in surprise. Izumi, guys, you might want to come see this. As some of the others came to look, Shoto spotted a note on the table and walked over to it. Everyone who saw the room was surprised by the state of it. Plastic and ceramic pieces were strewn all over the floor, desks and bed. Posters were shredded to pieces, and the word power was written all over the walls in red. Shoto, this letter, it's directed to Toshinori and Inko as well as the Bakugo twins. Returning to the dining room, the letter was opened and what was written inside was a shock to all but Izumi, who already knew all this. Izumi pretended to be shocked by the news in the letter. Shoto reading the letter. To Toshinori, hello father, if you are reading this letter, it means I have run away due to all of the neglect from my parents and all of the abuse from the Bakugo twins. Let's start with the neglect. Toshinori and Inko, I refuse to call them mom and dad anymore, have neglected me since they found out about my quirklessness. They refused to talk to me and even interact with me. Whenever I was injured, they refused to take me to the hospital, so I was forced to learn first aid all by myself. If you asked them what I liked, I doubt you would get a correct answer. Izumi can vouch for what the correct answers are. Now on to the abuse. Katsuki and Katsumi constantly physically and mentally abused me. The photos that I have left in the envelope show all of the scars I have from the abuse. Couldn't be subtle, could you, Bakugo twins? The tipping point for all of this was the last day at Aldra High. Katsuki told me he had a way to get a new quirk, to take a swan dive off the roof and hope for one in my next life. Don't worry, this isn't a suicide note, I just ran away. I just want to say thank you to Izumi, Shoto and Shoka for helping me get through this, and thanks to Uncle Nizu for providing me with an apartment for the next 10 months until the UA entrance exam. Oh, almost forgot to reveal this, Toshinori, or should I say All Might, is the worst father to ever exist. Who knew the symbol of peace would rather give his quirk to his daughter instead of allowing his son a chance at being a hero. Just because I was quirkless, and you believed I didn't have the true heart of a true hero. One final FU, but might, Inko. FU too, Katsuki, Katsumi. Much hate, Izuku. The room was silent. Everyone had gasped, discovering that Toshinori was actually All Might. The only people who weren't surprised by this statement were Nizu, Detective Tsukachi and Izumi. Nizu grabbed the envelope and tipped out the Polaroid photos, revealing a shirtless Izuku with hundreds of scars on his front, sides and back. Nizu, so, care to answer some questions on why you two neglected your son? Toshinori, that's all lies. We never neglected him. Tsukachi, okay then, what's his favorite drink? Toshinori, Inko. Toshinori, I didn't know Tsukachi, demon. He's telling the truth. Nizu, now it's your turn, Katsuki, Katsumi. Did you two abuse Izuku? Katsuki, that 𝗵𝗃 quirkless 𝗵𝗃 Deku. I'm going to kill him next time I see him. Everyone had a look of horror at the words that just came out of Katsuki's mouth. Especially his mother. Tsukachi pulled out 2 sheets of paper while Mitsuki reprimanded her kids for their actions. Fear suddenly showed on their faces as the papers were pulled out, but luckily for them, they were disownment papers that Toshinori and Inko had to sign. Enji, who had been holding himself together this whole time, finally snapped. He stood up and grabbed Toshinori by the shirt, lifting him off the ground. Enji, how could you do this, Toshinori? Neglecting your son, you hypocrite. Enji's body burst into flames as Toshinori entered his buff form so he could put his feet on the ground. Everyone gasped again, finally seeing for themselves the proof that Toshinori was All Might. Ray, Enji, calm down, you're going to burn the whole building down. Enji managed to calm himself down, whilst All Might and Inko looked at the ground in despair. Nizu chose this moment to talk to the Bakugo twins about what was going to happen with them. Nizu, as for you two, as much as I hate to say this, Izuku has requested for you two to not be punished in any way. So consider yourselves lucky. But this type of attitude is frowned upon at UA. The Bakugo twins looked up in surprise, wondering why Izuku spared them. A scary smile appeared on Nizu's face as he said the next part of Izuku's message. Nizu, he wanted you two to be at UA so that he could show you two what true power is. His quirk has finally come into play, and from what I have seen, it rivals that of the devil hunters of old. Fear shone on the Bakugo twins' faces. They were huge fans of the 𝗍𝗲𝗍𝗃 crew and knew how strong they were. Nizu then walked back over to Inko and All Might, who had shrunk back down to his small form, laughing menacingly the whole way. Gil, all hail the rat god. 𝗍𝗓, as for you too, Toshinori will have his pay docked, and both of you have to sign these dissownment papers provided by 𝗧𝗏𝗁𝗄. As everything was finalized, 𝗍𝗓 turned to Izumi, smiled and gave a thumbs up. 𝗍𝗓, Izuku says, see you in 10 months sis? He really regrets that it had to come to this, but he always smiles when he talks about you. This put a smile on Izumi's face. The next day. Izuku's apartment. Izuku, see that hurts? Hanako, Izuku, are you okay? Izuku, yes Hanako, I'm good. Hanako, are you sure? Izuku, yes, I'm sure Hanako. Sadly, no training today though. My arms are in pain. Izuku got up out of bed, trying to avoid using his arms too much. Hanako, hey, you lay down on the couch? Izuku, no, I'm okay. Hanako, I wasn't asking. Lay down. Izuku let out a sigh of defeat and lay down on the couch. Hanako walked over and sat on the couch with him. Hanako, now, what happened to you last night? Izuku, I fused with Lady Yamato, which allows me to use all of my weapons now. Hanako, your shoulder's bleeding. Let me get the bandages. Hanako rushed off to get the medical supplies, while Izuku took his shirt off. Hanako applied some disinfectants, which Izuku didn't react to at all. This confused Hanako, but she kept treating the wound. Izuku winced as he reached one hand up and brushed Hanako's hair behind her ear, making her blush. Izuku appeared to care for Hanako a lot, although she didn't know the true extent. Izuku stared into Hanako's sky blue eyes as she wrapped the bandage around his shoulder. Once she was finished treating his wound, Hanako stood up to put the medical supplies back. As she left, she thought she heard Izuku sigh sadly. When she walked back into the room, Hanako saw Izuku trying to sit up. She walked forward and put a hand on his 𝗧𝗑𝗧, pushing him back down. Hanako, no, you're staying there for the rest of the day. Izuku, but Hanako, no buts. Stay. Izuku, alright fine. I have 2 requests though. First, could you get my phone for me? Hanako, what? Izuku, I'm expecting a call from Uncle 𝗍𝗓, and I need to call my sister as well, to let her know I'm fine. Hanako walked out and got the phone for him. When she returned, Izuku had the TV remote in his hand. Hanako, Izuku, I thought I told you to stay there. Izuku, I did, 𝗬𝗲𝗿𝗍𝗄 got the remote for me. Hanako, Izuku, all-day movie marathon. Surely we will watch these Hanako. Hanako, alright, as long as it's not horror, I'll watch anything. Hanako sat down on another couch. Okay, that was a sad sigh, definitely. Hanako thought to herself. Hanako, what? Did you want me to sit with you? Izuku, but I didn't say that. Hanako, ugh fine, I'll come sit with you. Izuku, you're joking, right? Hanako was not joking. She had already stood up and walked over to where Izuku was laying down. She got him to sit up so she could sit where his head was. Izuku placed his head on her lap, only to jump at the sound of his phone. He sat up and picked up his phone. It was a message from 𝗍𝗓. 𝗍𝗓, last night was successful, your parents signed the dissownment forms, there is a last name change form in the mail for you. Izumi said she wanted you to call her so she could see your face. Izuku replied 𝗍𝗓's message with thanks, then opened his contacts. Hanako, who are you calling? Izuku, my sister. Before he could call the number, Izuku received a FaceTime request from Izumi. Accepting it, he held the phone up and smiled. Izuku, hello Izumi. Izumi, oh my god. What happened to your shoulder? Hanako chose this moment to reveal herself, by laying her head on his injured shoulder. Hanako, I don't know what happened to his shoulder. Nightmares maybe. Izumi, who's this? Izuku, let me introduce you to, Hanako, this is my sister Izumi. Izumi, this is my roommate Hanako. Izuku blushed, realizing what he almost said. Hanako, what were you going to call me? Izuku, no, it was an accident, I swear. They heard laughing from the other end of the phone. Izumi, haha, brother, awkward as ever I see. Izuku, Hanako, well, it's nice to meet you Izumi. Izuku holds you in high praise. Izumi, nice to meet you too, Hanako. I'm glad Izuku has found someone else he can trust. Hanako, thanks Izumi. Izuku, I'm sorry Hanako. Hanako, for what? Hanako wanted to tease Izuku, to get him back for yesterday. Izuku, for almost calling you my Izumi. Stop teasing him, Hanako. As funny as it is, I want to talk to a functional Izuku. Hanako, alright. As Izuku and Izumi caught up on what was happening in each of their lives, with Hanako adding her input every now and then, Izumi heard a noise. Izumi, shoot, I have to go. Toshinori is calling for me. See you Izuku, Hanako. Izuku, see you later sis? Hanako, bye Izumi. Now I can torment my boyfriend freely. Izuku, yeah wait what? That was the last thing Izumi heard before the call was cut off. Giggling uncontrollably, she went to go see her father, to find out what he wanted. Izuku, are you serious? Hanako, yes Izuku I am. Izuku just stared wide-eyed at her in shock. He couldn't believe what he had heard. Hanako called him her boyfriend. A reject like him. Hanako, what? Do you not want me to be your girlfriend? She got a hug in reply. Stunned for a second, she hugged him back. When Izuku let go, he had a pained loom on his face. Izuku, my arms? Hanako, don't do that again, dummy. I care for you, you know. Izuku, yes I do, Hana. Izuku chose this moment to lay his head back on Hanako's lap. She was stunned and red in the face from what he called her. Gil, geez, that escalated quickly. The movies had started to play. It seemed like it was an action-based marathon. Every time that there was an explosion in the movies, Izuku flinched. Hanako, noticing this, asked him what was wrong. Hanako, Izuku, are you okay? Why are you flinching so much? Izuku, it's them. They're everywhere. Hanako, seeing the fear on Izuku's face, turned off the TV. She grabbed his face and turned it to hers. They sat there for a bit. Once he had calmed down, Izuku apologized to Hanako. Hanako, it's okay Izu, how are your arms doing? Izuku, they don't hurt as much as they did this morning. Wait, what did you call me? Hanako, what's wrong Izu dear? Izuku just blushed a little and turned away. This earned a laugh from Hanako. Izuku, well, I've got to go to the shops to buy some more food for us. Hanako, I'm coming with you. I don't trust you to not hurt yourself again. Izuku, alright Hana. Let's go. Hanako threw a shirt at Izuku, which he put on. Izuku saw a frown on Hanako's face. This made him grin evilly. Izuku, would you prefer me to not wear a shirt? Hanako, I never said that. Izuku started laughing at this. Izuku, you were thinking of it, weren't you? Hanako, Izuku held out his hand. Izuku, well, you coming? Hanako walked forward and took his hand. I'm so glad that management lent us her house for the week. Gil? Yeah, she's a lifesaver. Management, I can hear you guys from here. Management walked out of her room and glared at Gil. Management, don't you guys have another chapter to release? Gil? You're right, Mana. Management, shut up Gil. Gil, smirking, alright, here is the next chapter everyone. Izuku POV, I got up out of my bed and got ready for today. Today was the day, all of our training had led up to today. I went to go wake up Hanako, but she was already up and ready. She looked excited, as if she couldn't wait to show off her new power. I held my hand out to her, which she took, and we headed off to go to you. When we arrived, we were directed to a room where the pro hero present Mike was giving an overly loud speech. I tuned out for most of his speech, even though Hanako kept poking me to try and get me to pay attention. One of the other students was asking about the zero-pointer robots. I already knew most of the information because of Uncle Nizu. Then I heard it. The loud, aggressive Pomeranian was shouting at the student who was asking about the zero-pointers. Tenya Ito was his name. Hanako poked me again, a little harder this time. Hanako, oi, it's time to go to the exam area. I got up rubbing my eyes, and followed her out of the room. We came to a big closed gate with some other students. The Bakugo twins seemed to be in a different area, and the Todoroki twins got in on the recommendation exam. So they were basically already in. I grinned, summoning the Yamato to my hand. The gates opened and I rushed straight in, not waiting for someone to say go. I heard 𝗵𝗃 say something about heroes not waiting for someone to tell them to go, but I didn't really hear him over the sounds of the robots. Third-person POV, Izuku was destroying robots all over the place. He destroyed whatever he saw, occasionally saving people who needed help. 𝗍𝗍 was impressed at this sight. As he was watching Izuku, All Might walked into the room in his skinny form. 𝗧𝗵𝗃, that boy looks familiar. 𝗍𝗍, his file says that his name is Izuku Sparta. 𝗧𝗵𝗃, Izuku that green Harry's that myson. 𝗍𝗍, no you don't have a son anymore. You were forced to disown him because of your neglect. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 flinched at this, remembering that he really shouldn't mess with 𝗍𝗍, especially when it comes to his former son. 𝗍𝗍 cracked his knuckles. 2 minutes were remaining, time to release the 0 pointers. 𝗍𝗍 slammed his fist down on the big red button on his control panel. Izuku felt it, the rumbling through the ground. He looked up, seeing a massive 0 pointer. He was going to walk away and go attack more robots when he saw an auburn-haired girl laying on the ground in the path of the 0 pointer. Izuku sighed and walked over to her. Izuku, are you okay? No, I think I sprained my ankle. Izuku, I'll get you to safety. Doppelganger. Take this girl to safety while I deal with this scum. Doppelganger nodded and picked up the girl, and moved to the entrance. Izuku started laughing quietly at first, but it slowly got both louder and less sane-sounding. 𝗍𝗍 had a smile on his face as Izuku's laugh rivaled that of his own as the people in the office and around Izuku were afraid of his laugh. Izuku, oh 𝗍𝗍, you've outdone yourself. Now I'm feeling a little motivated. Izuku then ran forwards, up the leg of the 0 pointer and onto its shoulder. He then jumped above its head, drew the Yamato from its sheath, and cut the 0 pointer in two with a falling slash. Izuku flinched from the big explosion caused by the splitting of the 0 pointer. Then as Izuku was about to go find more robots to attack, the bell rang, signaling the end of the practical exam. Loudspeaker 𝗍𝗍, would Sparta, Yagi, Bakugo twins, and Todoroki twins please come to the viewing room? Hanako, well, I guess 𝗍𝗍 wants to talk with you. I'll meet you at the written exam room then. Izuku, no, come with me, I don't want to have to deal with those two without you. Hanako, but 𝗍𝗍 didn't call for me. Izuku, he won't mind. Izuku grabbed her hand and took her to the viewing room, only stopping to check if the auburn-haired girl, who introduced herself as Ochako Uraraka, was okay. When they finally got to the doors, Izuku placed his hands on them, but hesitated. Hanako placed her hands over his, reassuring him. The room was a sight to behold. Tons of monitors over a control panel, people shouting at each other. The Todoroki and Bakugo twins were at each other's throats. Everyone went silent as Izuku's boots clacked against the floor as he walked past 𝗧𝗵𝗃 and shook 𝗍𝗍's hand. 𝗍𝗍, now you all may be wondering why I brought you to this room. As you all may know, a certain 𝗍𝗍 was interrupted by the sudden movement of Izumi as she ran over to give her brother a hug. Hanako, who was standing behind Izuku, smiled at this. Izumi stepped back from the hug and slapped Izuku in the face. Izumi, why haven't you called me for 2 months? Izuku had a sheepish expression on his face at this. Izuku, 𝗬𝗏𝗃 blow up my phone. Before Izumi could reply, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 walked forwards with open arms. 𝗧𝗵𝗃, son. I'm glad. He was stopped by a sword point to the throat, and the girl who was standing behind his child had pulled out a set of ornate claws, who had somehow moved at a speed that even he couldn't follow. She had these claws at his throat. Gil, imagine there are sharp-bladed points on the fingertips. Hanako, back off. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 walked backwards, wary of the girl. This is when Katsuki decided to speak. Katsuki, you're Deku. How pathetic, having that girl talk for you. Hanako tried to grab Izuku's arm, but he was already in Katsuki's face. The Todoroki twins managed to grab his arms before Izuku got too close. Katsuki set off an explosion, making Izuku flinch, and making Hanako realize that the two sandy blonde twins were the ones that gave Izuku his PTSD. Izumi saw Hanako getting angry, so she put her hand on her shoulder. Hanako felt the hand on her shoulder and calmed down. 𝗍𝗍, that's quite enough, There will be no fighting in my office. Hearing this, Izuku's exterior appearance changed. Instead of being red-faced with rage, he backed up, brushed off his shirt, and fixed his hair up. Izuku turned to Shoto and held out his hand, which Shoto took. Izuku then pulled him into a hug. Izuku, man, I haven't seen you in ages. Shoto returned the hug, albeit a bit stiff. Izuku then broke off the hug and smiled at his friend. When he turned around, Shoka ran up and hugged him as well. This made Hanako take a half step forward, which Izumi and Izuku both noticed. Izuku, it's great to see you again, little cousin. Hanako, hearing this, backed off a bit. Shoka was a little bit upset with Izuku calling her little, until she noticed the height difference. She broke of the hug and gently punched his shoulder. Shoka, had a growth spurt. Izuku, I guess, makes sense as none of my clothes other than these fit me. Izuku saw that Katsuki was still fuming at this, but Katsumi was different. She seemed more mature, her eyes were less angry, and seemed to hold regret. Izuku shook his head at this. Nizu, well, the written exam is starting soon, so are the recommendation exams, so you should all head off to your respective classrooms. Everyone started to file out except for Nizu, Toshinori, Izuku, Hanako, and Izumi. Izumi hugged her brother one last time before she left. As Izuku and Hanako were leaving the room, Toshinori said something. Toshinori, wait and come back to us, your mother misses you dearly. Izuku just turned around and stared his father down. Izuku, you reap what you sow, Toshinori, and don't ever call me that again. You are not my father, and I am not your son. Izuku left the room after this and walked to the written exam room, with Hanako holding onto his arm. Izuku, I'd say that went rather well. Other than me not being able to beat the CRP out of Katsuki. Katsumi seems to hold some regret for her actions, unlike her brother, which is good. I won't forgive her though. Hanako, don't worry about those guys at the moment, let's just work on these exams. Izuku, right? As the two entered the room, they saw that their examiner was Eraserhead, and that Katsuki and Katsumi were in their room. To calm himself, Izuku ran his hands through his girlfriend's hair, which earned a surprised look from the Bakugo twins, among most of the others in the class. This made Izuku grin, as he sat down in his seat. He flipped through the exam, his grin widening as every page passed. The exam was so easy. 30 minutes. That's all it took for Izuku to finish the exam. Hanako finished 10 minutes after him. As they left the classroom, Izuku suddenly felt a presence. He was in the back corner of the class. No, it wasn't Dante, probably his great-grandson. Gil, he looks identical to DMC3 Dante. He also has the exact same powers as Dante at the end of DMC5. Izuku left the classroom with Hanako in tow. Hanako was a slight bit confused at Izuku's reaction. He would tell her when they got home. Izuku then bumped straight into Izumi, who had also finished her exam. She looked up to see who had bumped into her. She smiled, realizing who it was. Izumi, hello brother. Izuku, hey little sis. Izumi, Toshinori is staying late, something about Uncle Nizu wanting to have a chat with him. Izuku, you could come over to our apartment to have some food if you want. I know that Inko wouldn't be home, due to her taking up a job to take her mind off the grief of losing me. Izumi, I'd be glad. Hanako, are you okay with this? Hanako, yeah, I'm glad that I get another girl my age to talk to while Aizu here silently cooks. Izumi, when did my brother get so confident and quiet? Hanako, it must be from the Yamato's influence. Izuku sighed as the two kept talking on the way home. Izumi and Hanako talked about him and what type of boys Izumi liked, stuff like that. He suddenly stopped, feeling that presence again, the one that sends him an urge to fight. Then he appeared in front of him. Dante's descendant. Instead of starting an unnecessary fight, Izuku held out his hand and introduced himself. Izuku, hello, my name's Izuku Yagi, nice to meet you. The other boy looked a bit surprised, but took the handshake. Likewise, name's Ryoshi Sparta. Izuku, descendant of Dante. Ryoshi, mind if I join you three? Izuku looked at the others, who nodded at him. Izuku, sure, why not? What food do you like? Ryoshi, pizza. Izuku and Hanako, dear lord, you're the exact same as him. Ryoshi, I've been told that before. Ryoshi's face seemed to brighten. He seems to like being similar to his great-grandfather, the legendary devil hunter. Izuku, allow me to introduce my friends. The one on my right is my sister, Izumi. The one clinging on to me on the left is my girlfriend, Hanako. Ryoshi, nice to meet you both. Hanako, same. Izumi, same. This earned a look from Izuku and Ryoshi, which made Izumi blush. Izumi, why are you two staring at me? Izuku, no reason. Ryoshi nodded, and the four set off. Once they entered Izuku's apartment, Hanako and Izumi went straight to the couches to chat, whereas Izuku went to cook, with Ryoshi following him. Izuku, my sister thinks you're hot. Ryoshi, right? After Izuku finished washing his hands, Ryoshi did the same. Izuku, you can cook? Ryoshi, yup, my mother taught me. Izuku, well, we're cooking chicken. Could you cut the vegetables? Ryoshi, yup. Izuku, here's a knife. Izuku threw a knife at Ryoshi, which he caught with ease. It didn't even faze him. Izuku smiled and started cutting the chicken. He had already set up a pan and put some chicken in it. He looked over at Ryoshi, seeing him quickly dicing the onions and tomatoes. Izuku started talking while watching the chicken cooking. Izuku, my sister is a sucker for muscles. Ryoshi, well, I do have a soft spot for blondes. Izuku gave Ryoshi a sideways look. Seeing he was telling the truth, Izuku smiled. Izuku, well, she does need someone. She's been a bit lonely since I left the house 10 months ago. Ryoshi, wait, you don't even know me, yet you're giving me permission to date your sister? Izuku, indirectly. I know a lot more about you than you think. Hanako told me about you quite a bit, as both of your families met a lot. Ryoshi, right? Izuku, and you seem like a trustworthy guy in my eyes, seeing as you didn't immediately start a fight with me on the way here. Ryoshi rubbed the back of his head, remembering his parents telling him that Virgil's successor may hate him, but it seemed like the opposite. Ryoshi smiled. Izuku took the chicken out and started preparing the plates. Izuku, dinner is ready. The girls walked in. Hanako was holding back laughter, while Izumi was red-faced and flustered. They must have heard what Izuku and Ryoshi were talking about. They all sat down together at the square table. Ryoshi sat across from Izuku, Hanako was to Izuku's right and Izumi was to his left, occasionally looking at Ryoshi. Izuku pulled a notebook and asked Ryoshi about his quirk. Writing down everything he said. Ryoshi went home after dinner, although not before getting Izuku and Izumi's phone numbers. This made both Izumi and Ryoshi blush a little. Izumi asked if she could stay at their place because Toshinori was staying at his hero agency overnight as he had some paperwork to sort out and Inko was asked to stay overtime at her job. Izuku looked over at Hanako and shrugged his shoulders. Izuku, sure, you can take Hanako's room, Hanako can take mine and I will sleep on the couch. Izumi, thanks brother. I'm going to have a shower now. Izuku, down that way, first door on the right. Izumi, thanks brother. Izuku opened his eyes and saw Hanako's face right up to his. He smiled at her, she moved her head back a bit to allow Izuku to sit up. She then sat down next to him. Izumi walked out of Hanako's room and looked at the two of them on the couch. Izuku's arm wrapped around Hanako's shoulder, and her head resting on his shoulder. This made Izumi smile, wishing she could be in a relationship like theirs. Izuku jumped at the sound of the door knocking. He got up and opened the door. Nizu, hello Izuku. Izuku, Nizu. What are you doing here? Nizu, I've come to personally congratulate you, Hanako and your sister. Hanako, congratulate us? Nizu nodded his head as he walked over to the middle of the room. Nizu, yes, congratulations to you three, as you all got 100% on the written exam and beat All Might's record on the practical exam. Izuku, what? Nizu, All Might scored a solid 100 points. Izumi scored 120, Hanako 150, and Izuku 200. The girls' jaws dropped. Izuku doubled All Might's score. Izuku was also surprised he had only scored 150 points. Nizu, There was a hidden point system called rescue points. Izuku had gotten 50 rescue points, which allowed him to double All Might score. I also wanted to inform you all that you are all in Class 1A together. Ryoshi is also in Class 1A. I saw that he came with you guys, so I wanted to inform you. Izuku, thanks Uncle Nizu. Izuku shot a knowing glance at Hanako, who grinned. Nizu, the dorms open tomorrow, so you can pack today and arrive tomorrow. Izuku, I need new clothes anyway, so I should go buy some from the mall before tomorrow. Thanks again, Nizu. Nizu waved on the way out in response to the question. Izuku turned around and looked at the girls. Izuku, who wants to go shopping? Both girls raised their hands. Izuku grinned and opened a portal with the Yamato. They arrived at the mall and decided to split up. The girls needed some supplies, while Izuku only needed some clothes. After an hour, Izuku waited at the exit for the girls. Then a little girl bumped into Izuku. Izuku looked down and saw a girl with pale blue-gray hair, no shoes, and bandages down her arms. This set off some alarm bells in Izuku's head. Izuku crouched down to look the girl in the eyes. She had vibrant red eyes. Izuku, hello little one, are you lost? The girl only nodded in response. Izuku, should we find your parents? At the mention of parents, she grabbed on tight to Izuku. Now he was curious, why was she so scared of her parents? Eri, come here. Stop pestering that man. Izuku looked up and his eyes widened, recognizing the person as a Yakuza leader that the Hero Association had been chasing for a while. Nizu had told him to steer clear of this man. But he couldn't just leave this girl with him. Izuku, so your name is Eri? She nodded again. Izuku, go to those two girls over there while I deal with this guy. Eri looked at Izuku's calm movements as she walked over to Hanako and Izumi, who had just appeared. Izuku, hello Overhaul, or should I say Kai Chisaki? Overhaul, so, you're not going to give the girl back to me. I hate getting my hands dirty. Izuku, you gave her those injuries, didn't you? Overhaul, so what if I did? Izuku summoned the Yamato to his hand. Izuku, scum like you shouldn't exist? Izuku heard the sound of heroes arriving. He sighed. Izuku, I assume you're going to run now as you don't want to deal with the heroes, but you will be back for Eri later? Overhaul didn't respond. He just turned around and walked off, hands in pockets. Izuku turned around, pulling out his phone, calling Nizu. He told Nizu of his current circumstances and Nizu agreed to give him a bigger room to accommodate Eri. Izuku then walked over to Eri and held out his hand. Eri, no. Don't touch me. You will disappear. Izuku, is it because of your quirk? Eri nodded. Izuku, don't worry, I know someone who can cancel quirks, let's go see him now. The pro heroes arrived on the scene just as Izuku's portal closed. They were now in Nizu's office. Eraserhead was already there, as he was talking to Nizu before. Izuku POV, Izuku, Eraserhead, keep an eye on the girl please, apparently she can't control her quirk and it erases people. Eraserhead looked at me and then back to Nizu, who nodded at him. I explained everything to Nizu. Eri walked over and I picked her up to put her on the free chair that was in Nizu's office. She grabbed onto my hand, she appeared to be a bit frightened by Nizu. As I started to talk with Nizu about how the large room was going to work, my whole body was suddenly racked with pain. I felt the fingers on my right hand start to disintegrate. Eraserhead's eyes suddenly went red and his hair started to float and the pain cut off. Eri started to cry so I grabbed a hold of her. Izuku, it's okay Eri, I'm not hurt. Eri, but your fingers. I looked at my hand, which was missing a couple of fingers. I looked at her as my fingers started to regrow. Izuku, see. I'm okay. Not a scratch. Eri looked surprised at the speed that my fingers had regrown. Izuku, as you can see Nizu, I am able to recover from almost any injury. The other week I lost an arm in training and it regenerated in 3 seconds. Nizu, well, Shota Aizawa is going to be your homeroom teacher, so this works out pretty well, as Shota already planned to stay on site. Izuku, excellent. We also need to train Eri to be able to control her quirk, so it seems that Mr. Aizawa would be the best choice for her to train with as well. Eri, am I going to be staying with you, Papa? The whole room went quiet, everyone was shocked by the cuteness. Eri had become attached to Izuku already, it seems. Izuku seemed to be the only one who had been able to keep his senses. Izuku, yes Eri, you will be staying with me throughout the school years. Eri smiled at this. Something she hadn't done in a while. Both of the girls collapsed due to the cuteness, whereas Izuku merely got lightheaded. Eri, I'm glad I get to stay with you, Papa. Izuku collapsed at this. His last thoughts were, she's too cute. Gil, no news on the arsonist yet? Yeah, management is asking around Gil. In the meantime, enjoy the new chapter. Third-person POV. Izuku and Hanako were packing their bags for UA, while Eri was watching. Eri was intrigued by the way that Izuku and Hanako threw and caught stuff without looking. Izuku, here's your claws. Izuku threw Hanako's claw weapons to her. Izuku had gotten her these as a present. Flashback, Izuku and Hanako were walking through the mall when something caught Izuku's eyes. Gil, imagine there are sharp-bladed points on the fingertips for puncturing open-hand attacks, and the knuckle spikes are good for extra damage on strong closed fist strikes. He saw these claws on advertisement in a weapons store. Izuku walked in, practically dragging Hanako with him. Hanako, hey. I thought we were only here to get food. Izuku, I found a set of weapons that could assist you greatly. They even suit your close-range fighting style. Hanako sighed, knowing full well that she couldn't stop him when he got like this. She loves her little analyst, but sometimes forgets how far he goes to help people sometimes. It took about 15 minutes extra, but it was worth it. Izuku, deadly but appealing. Just like you. This made Hanako blush a bit. The weapons took some getting used to, but they were effective. Flashback end. Hanako caught the weapons. Hanako, thanks Izu. Once they had finished packing, Izuku, Eri, and Hanako left the apartment through one of Izuku's portals. All of them in uniform. This included Eri. They left their bags by the drop-off point and walked off to Class 1A. The three of them bumped into Izumi and Ryoshi. Ryoshi, speak of the devil Izuku. And he doth appear. Izuku held his hand out and a loud ringing clap was heard as his and Ryoshi's hands connected. Izuku, I assume my sister has told you about little Eri here. Ryoshi, yes she did. Ryoshi crouched down to Eri's level and held a hand out. Ryoshi, hello little one. My name's Ryoshi, nice to meet you. Eri, hello. Eri didn't take his hand until Izuku put a hand on her shoulder. Izuku, he's a good friend of mine. You can trust him. Eri shook Ryoshi's hand. Ryoshi smiled and stood up. The group walked to the oversized doors and heard voices on the other side. Izuku picked up Eri and put her on his shoulders. Ryoshi opened the door and the room fell quiet as the top 4 students entered the room. Although, people were more surprised by the little girl. Ida, why do you have that child with you? Izuku ignored him as Mr. Aizawa would explain his predicament when he got there. Hanako sat at Izuku's left. There was a smaller desk to his right where Eri sat. Ryoshi and Izumi sat behind them. Ryoshi behind Izuku and Izumi behind Hanako. There was 2 empty seats in front of Izuku and Hanako. The door opened again and in walked the Todoroki twins. Shoto nodded at the 4 of them and Shoko waved excitedly. Izuku flinched as the next people came exploding through the door. Literally. The Bakugo twins walked into the room. Katsumi was rather quiet whereas her brother was setting off explosions in his hands. Hanako reached over and grabbed Izuku's hand, seeing him flinch from the explosions. Everyone else eventually entered the classroom. Izuku, Hanako, Ryoshi, Izumi and Eri went quiet as they heard the door open. Everyone was still chatting until they all eventually went quiet, noticing that their teacher had arrived. Aizawa, it took you all 8 seconds to quiet down, except for the top 4 and the girl. Speaking of the girl, allow me to explain the situation. Izuku saved the girl from abusive parents, and she has a powerful quirk that she can't control. With my erasure quirk, I can make sure that she doesn't lose control. Izuku sighed as he remembered the cover story that they were using for Eri. They didn't want the school knowing that she was the daughter of the leader of the Shy Hasaikai. Ida stood up again as if to complain, but Izuku's glare put him back in his seat. Aizawa, now with that sorted, everyone put on your sports uniform, we're going to do a quirk apprehension test. Achiko, what about orientation? 𝗧𝗏, in this school, teachers are allowed to teach how they like. I like to test my students on the first day to see if they are worthy of becoming heroes. Some other members of the class were complaining, but Izuku, Izumi, Hinako, Ryoshi, Eri, Shoto and Shoka had already stood up and started to walk out. Ida, where are you seven going? Izuku, the teacher said to get into our sports uniforms, we're going to get changed. 𝗧𝗏, I like you seven already. Shortly 𝗧𝗏, Izuku, Izumi, Hinako, Ryoshi, Eri, Shoto and Shoka were already out at the field, waiting for everyone else to arrive. 𝗧𝗏 looked up as he heard footsteps. The rest of the class had arrived. Once everyone had settled down, 𝗧𝗏 told them of the tests that they were doing and that they were allowed their quirks. 𝗧𝗏 asked Izuku to demonstrate the ball throw. Izuku threw the ball up and summoned Yamato, only to have it disappear before he could hit the ball. 𝗧𝗏, I would prefer if you hit the ball, rather than cutting it in half. Izuku, yes sir. I'll use a different weapon this time. Izuku grinned, getting to show off one of his other weapons, which he hadn't shown Hinako yet. Izuku had trained with these weapons privately, now he had an excuse to show one of them off. He threw the ball up again, and as the ball got closer to him, he dropped into a fighting stance. Izuku, Beowulf. Izuku punched the ball, sending it flying out across the field. 𝗧𝗏 looked at his tablet and grinned. He turned it around to show the class. 𝗧𝗏, looks like we've got a strong one here. The tablet read 40,000 meters. Izuku, that's what I get for not practicing a lot with these. Hinako rushed forward and looked at the gauntlets and greaves he had, geeking out at getting to see Virgil's Beowulf. Everyone else was shocked at the feat, especially Katsuki. Katsumi was more reserved, her eyes merely widening at the number, rather than fuming at the new power that Izuku has like her brother. Katsuki, how are you this powerful deck dash? A loud whacking noise was heard. Everyone turned to see that Ryoshi had thrown the ball as well. He had used rebellion like a baseball bat and hit the ball with it. 80,000 meters. Izuku grinned at this. Izuku, Ryoshi. Whoever gets first picks dinner. Ryoshi, you're on. 𝗧𝗏 grinned at this show of friendly competition. Meter dash, St. Izuku 0.001 seconds ND, Ryoshi 0.002 seconds road, Hinako 0.005 seconds grip strength, St. Izuku 50,000 kilograms ND, Ryoshi 49,000 kilograms RD, Izumi 44,000 kilograms repeated side steps St. Izuku 100 ND, Ryoshi 1098 RD, Hinako 1090 Ryoshi. Damn it, almost had you on a couple there. Izuku, I get to pick dinner. The overall scores were as follows: St. Izuku Sparta ND, Ryoshi Sparta RD, Hinako Sparta 𝗔𝗂𝗃, Izumi Yagi 𝗔𝗂𝗃, Momo Yaoyorozu 𝗔𝗂𝗃, Shoto Todoroki 𝗔𝗂𝗃, Shoka Todoroki 𝗔𝗂𝗃, 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗃 𝗔𝗂𝗃, Katsuki 𝗵𝗃, Tenya Ida 𝗔𝗂𝗃, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 𝗃𝗄𝗵𝗃, Mezu Shoji 𝗔𝗂𝗃, Mashareo Ojiro 𝗔𝗂𝗃, Ijiro Kirishima 𝗔𝗂𝗃, Mina Ashido 𝗔𝗂𝗃, Achiko Uraraka 𝗔𝗂𝗃, Koji Koda 𝗔𝗂𝗃, Rikido Sato 𝗔𝗂𝗃, 𝗬𝗏 𝗔𝗂𝗃, Yuga Aoyama St. Hanada Siro ND, Denki Kaminari RD, Kyuka Jiro 𝗔𝗂𝗃 Toru Hagakure 𝗔𝗂𝗃, Minoru Mineta 𝗧𝗏. We have some real powerhouses this year. Everyone head off that way, the dorms are over there. 𝗎𝗎 will tell you everything. Man, I need a coffee. The students walked off to meet 𝗎𝗎 by the dorms. Everyone wondered why 𝗎𝗎 would be telling them about their dorms, bar a few. Eri was riding on Izuku's shoulders as she was trying to stay away from everyone else. They arrived at the dorms. 𝗎𝗎 guided them all to the common room. 𝗎𝗎, over to the left there is the lounge, and to the right is the kitchen. Izuku immediately walked over to the kitchen, as 𝗎𝗎 explained everything to the rest of the class. Izuku pulled a knife out of the knife rack. He smiled seeing that it was sharpened to perfection. 𝗎𝗎, due to the size of this class, and some special circumstances, there are 2 shared rooms. The shared rooms are as follows. Room 1, Izumi and Ryoshi. Izumi looked surprised. She looked at her brother, who was still in the kitchen. He was grinning. Izumi started to blush, realizing that he had asked 𝗍𝗬 for the specific rooming. 𝗍𝗬, the second shared room, goes to Izuku, Hanako, and Eri. Due to her condition, it is safest for Eri to stay with Izuku, as his quirk has a healing factor. Shoto, really Izuku. Your quirk has a regenerative aspect. Izuku, allow me to demonstrate. 𝗍𝗬, don't go overboard like you did with the other teachers. Izuku looked at 𝗍𝗬 with a sheepish grin. Izuku, just a few fingers then. Izuku lifted the knife up, then let it fall, chopping off 4 of his fingers. A gasp came from the class. The fingers and the BLD started to disintegrate as his fingers regrew in 2 seconds. Izuku, ha, nicely sharpened knife. Momo, that's what you say. Hanako, calm down Momo. He's done way worse, Izuku. I can regenerate from basically any injury, but that doesn't mean I don't feel pain. I just have a high pain tolerance. The rest of the class looked like they wanted to ask questions, but they were interrupted by their bags being brought in. As everyone started to take their bags up, Izuku called out a question. Izuku, head count. Who's up for lunch? I'm cooking. Everyone liked the idea of having their lunch cooked for them. Izuku, 26 rounds, oof. Ryoshi, you free to help? Ryoshi, yes. Izumi, could you take my bags up to our room for me? Izumi, why yes, that's no problem Ryoshi. Ryoshi, thanks a ton. Izuku, Eri. Do you want to help cook? Eri, Izuku, are you shy of the people? Eri nodded her head. Izuku walked over to her and placed his hand on her head, earning a few AWWWs from the girls. Izuku, no one is going to hurt you here. Eri, you promise? Izuku, I promise, Snowball. Eri smiled at this, making anyone that could see her collapse from her cuteness. Izuku, this is my rule. You want to get to Eri, you go through me, understand? Everyone agreed to this. Izuku could have sworn that he heard someone say that he was so manly. Izuku shrugged this off, he just wanted people to treat Eri kindly. Izuku turned around and picked up Eri. He gave her a white tallboy chef's hat. Everyone eventually filed out into the dining area. Everyone who saw Izuku and Ryoshi cook were amazed. Their teamwork was impeccable. No one could deny that Eri was cute. She was running around in a chef's hat, passing vegetables and meat to the two. The speed that the two were cooking at was impeccable. They were constantly throwing the knives at each other when need be. Ryoshi, pass me that bread knife please Izuku. Izuku didn't hesitate. He reached out with his hand, grabbed the knife, and threw it at Ryoshi without ever looking away from the meat that he was cooking. Ryoshi caught the knife without looking and immediately went to cutting the bread. Lunch was served. Eri, Izuku, and Ryoshi were handing out plates to everyone. Eri got quite a few pats on the head from the girls, and some of the guys as well. The food was amazing. Enough to fill them up, but not too much, as they had a heroics class later in the day. Psi Class 1A entered their classroom and sat down, waiting for their new teacher. Izuku was chatting with Eri. Ryoshi was chatting with Izumi. That was when Hanako felt the presence, one she wished she would never see again. She grabbed onto Izuku's hand, confusing him. That's when he entered. Izuku, does he always have to be this flamboyant? Hanako, I know, right? All Might had said something about heroes versus villain simulations. Izuku wasn't really paying attention. Izuku got up to get changed with everyone else. Izuku was going to get changed into his gym outfit. Izuku watched as 𝗵𝗏 wandered over to the wall separating the girls' and boys' change room, inspecting every inch of the place. There was a poster on the wall, so he lifted it up. 𝗵𝗏, hey guys. I found a hole that he didn't get to say anymore. He felt the presence of death behind him. He turned around and saw Izuku, who had summoned the Yamato and started to draw it from the sheath. Izuku, scum like you doesn't deserve to be left alive. 𝗵𝗏 ran out of the change room before Izuku could carry out his threat. Izuku just laughed maniacally and sat in the change rooms, waiting for everyone to leave as he was trying to hide his scars as much as possible. Everyone had arrived at the training grounds, bar one. All Might, where is Izuku Sparta? Izuku, right here. Izuku walked out of the tunnel in his gym outfit, getting some sighs of disappointment from some of the girls and a look of disdain from All Might. Izuku watched Hanako try and hide her anger at the other girls. All Might, where's your hero outfit? Young Sparta Izuku, right here? Izuku summoned the Yamato. Reality started to form cracks around Izuku. Izuku was obscured by the cracks in reality. When reality around him shattered, Izuku was seen in his hero outfit. Izuku, are you happy now? All Might sighed and started to explain what was going to be happening with the simulations. Names were going to be drawn out at random, yada yada. Izuku was yet again ignoring what All Might said. He looked over and smiled, seeing Hanako's hero outfit. Gil, minus the sword, she has her spiked gauntlet gloves on. Also, Hanako's hair is exactly as shown in that picture. Izuku, I like the costume, although you could add a bit of green. Hanako thought on this, wondering how she would add some green to her costume. Izuku looked up to see the names shown and had to hold back from laughing. Match 1 Hero Team, Shoto Todoroki and 𝗵𝗃 Villain Team, Shoka Todoroki and 𝗳𝗏𝗃 𝗬𝗧𝗏 Match 2 Hero Team, 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗺 Sparta and 𝗵𝗃 Shoji Villain Team, Katsuki Bakugo and Ijiro Kirishima Match 3 Hero Team, Izuku Sparta and Hanako Sparta Villain Team, Izumi Yagi and Katsumi Bakugo Izuku, Ryoshi. Give Katsuki hell for me. Ryoshi, oh I will. Especially after what he did to you. Izuku smiled at this, and followed everyone to the viewing room to watch the first match. Shoto POV, I was waiting outside with my teammate. I had the start of a plan in my head. Shoto, I'm going to try and freeze the whole building before my sister manages to set up her plan. If that doesn't work, use your tape to get through the top window, we will be able to cover more ground that way. Hanta, that should work out well. All Might, loudspeaker ver. The hero team may now enter the building. With this said, I walked calmly up to the building and placed my right hand on the building, freezing it. The whole building was quickly covered in flames which immediately disappeared after the ice melted. Shoto, damn it, she had enough time to set up. Siro, can you get up through the top window? Hanta, on it? I kicked down the front door as Hanta flew up to the top window with his tape. I walked around the lower area of the building, making sure that I checked every room. I went up to the second floor and saw her standing there. She ran around a corner and I started to follow. Hearing the sound of ice forming, I lit up my fire side and saw the ice curve around the corner. I blasted it with my fire, surprised at the level of control that she had. I rushed after my sister, realizing how dangerous it was to be out of sight of her. I informed Siro that I had found Shoka. He replied that he was currently fighting 𝗬𝗧𝗏. I turned a corner and saw her again. This time, she had a sword of ice in one hand and a fire one in the other. I dropped into a fighting stance and watched as Shoka pointed the ice sword at me. I activated my left side as the sword extended and flew at me from where she was standing. Shoka, 𝗫𝗄. Holy ice spear. I melted the sword as it got to me. I activated my right side. I froze the floor and skated at my sister. Shoto, ice mace, that's when I heard it. The crackling of fire. I looked to the open door to my left as a wall of flame rushed towards me. Third-person POV, Shoka's plan worked. It actually worked. She was so happy, but she couldn't get ahead of herself. She stopped the fire, thinking it was enough. It wasn't. Shoto was in an ice prison. He lit up his left side, melting it, and walked out. Shoto, sorry Shoka, you can't beat me in terms of raw power. Shoto rushed forwards, sending ice spikes towards her to force her to dodge. He shot fire at her as she tried to retaliate with ice. Shoka summoned an ice clone. This clone managed to knock Shoto back a bit before he could melt it. Shoka eventually fell to her knees. She had run out of stamina. Shoto taped her hands with the capture tape. All Might, loudspeaker ver. All villains have been captured. The hero team wins. Gil, sorry, got to take this call and we can delay the start a bit. Gil, thanks. And Gil picks up the phone and places it over his ear. Gil, hello. Oh hi management. Wait, you found him. Third-person POV. The class stood in shocked silence. Shoto had easily dealt with his sister in a show of absolute power. Izuku grinned at this. He watched as Shoto carried Shoka back to the observation room where Recovery Girl was waiting. All Might, 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗍 Sparta, 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟𝗘, Bakugo and 𝗓𝗍𝗄 please head to the next building. Aizawa. Ryoshi, is that a gun? Ryoshi, yes, it's part of my quirk. It's loaded with RBB bullets. Aizawa, all right then, off you go. As Ryoshi left, he turned and gave Izuku a thumbs up. Ryoshi POV, so his quirk is 𝗵𝗃, that should work. Ryoshi, Shoji, let's both enter through the front door. I'll go after Katsuki. Mezu, why are you after him? Ryoshi, call it a favor for a friend. All Might, the hero team may enter the building. I drew my twin pistols, ebony and ivory. I kicked the door open. I heard explosions coming towards me. Ryoshi, Shoji run to the right, find Kirishima. Mezu on it. This was going to be fun. I hid around a corner and waited for Katsuki to come around. I saw his head as he came flying around the corner. I smacked him on the head with the butt end of my pistol. He went flying back into the wall. Ryoshi, well, if it isn't Katsuki Bakugo. Katsuki, 𝗷𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗃𝗃. Ryoshi, no need for that type of language. Katsuki, you're friends with that quirkless motherf. Ryoshi, not so fast, Kaken. I'm here to give you hell. With that said, I started spinning my pistols. I jumped my eyebrows at him before he rushed straight to me, screaming bloody murder. Does he have to be so loud? He reminds me of a loud Pomeranian. I blocked his first hit with my bare hands, then dropped down as he set off an explosion. Ryoshi, wow. What power? Let's see how you handle it in return. I crouched down in a defensive stance. Ryoshi, Royal Guard. Katsuki set off an explosion at me, but it did nothing. I walked forward with a grin on my face. I drop down to the stance every time he sets off an explosion. I get bored of this slow walking. Ryoshi, trickster. I start dashing around the explosions. I then punched him with the force of all of his explosions combined. I grin as he gets back up. His gauntlets beep. He grins and grabs the pin. Katsuki, I'm going to blast you to hell. Ryoshi, been there and back before. Katsuki, die. I feel the heat of the explosion wash over me. I hear Katsuki laugh. The fire dies down. I stare him dead in the eyes as I draw ebony and ivory. Ryoshi, jackpot. I shoot a shot from each gun. I watch as one hits his chest and one in the head. Katsuki fell down unconscious. Ryoshi, Katsuki down. Where are you, Shoji? Mezu, earpiece, second floor, need help with Kirishima. Ryoshi, on my way. I tie up Katsuki with the capture tape and rush to where my teammate is. I put away my pistols and reach into my arsenal for a more powerful gun. Instead, I decided to pull out 𝗬𝗏𝗏, my gauntlets and greaves. I fly into the room that Shoji and Kirishima are fighting. Ryoshi, Shoji, go find the bomb, I've got this. Mezu, right. Kirishima tried to run after Shoji, but a kick to the jaw from 𝗬𝗏𝗏 stopped him. We both dropped into our respective fighting stances. We start trading blows. I can't break through his defense, he can't break through mine. I grin when the gauntlets light on fire and shout 10. Suddenly, I'm at an advantage. 𝗬𝗏𝗏 hits max power after 10 hits. Parts of Kirishima's body start to crack off. I grin and punch him in the stomach. He doubled over in pain as I walk past him to let my gauntlets cool down. 𝗬𝗏𝗏, _thing. I put away 𝗬𝗏𝗏 as Kirishima stands up. I turn around and talk to him. Ryoshi, I don't hold any bad feelings towards you. This is just a game. Before he could reply, I pull out my 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏. I pull the trigger. Kirishima falls over after being hit in the head with a beanbag round. I look up to the camera and wave. All Might, the hero team wins. Alright, I forgot. Incapacitating both opponents is also a win. Third-person POV. Izuku smiled as he watched Ryoshi pick up Kirishima and carry him back. He left Katsuki for Shoji to pick up. All Might, well, that was quick. Izuku, just you wait for my round. I'll be thinking of you when I go in. All Might looked at Izuku, who had already turned around to talk to Hanako. Ryoshi walked in and gave Kirishima over to Recovery Girl. Izuku, wish you could have beat him for longer. Ryoshi, yeah, but I didn't want to get disqualified. Izuku, well, whatever. My turn. All Might, Will the third group head down to the building? Izuku, that's our cue, Hanako. Izuku and Hanako left the observation room. They had already thought of their plan. Give them hell. Izuku wanted to test his sister's power and resolve. He also wanted to see if 𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 truly felt bad for her actions. When All Might called the start, Izuku used Beowulf to punch the door open. He told Hanako to go straight as he could sense 𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 coming from the right. Izuku swapped to his third and final weapon, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁. He would need the speed against 𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲. She rounded the corner and jumped back as she saw Izuku standing there. Izuku grinned, and 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗲 shuddered in fear. Hanako was running around upstairs until she was slammed into the ceiling. She looked around and saw a camera. A custom one, not one of Nizu's. Hanako sighed and pulled out a knife. She threw it and smashed the camera. She then fell down and sat up with a grin. Hanako heard Izumi walk around the corner. Gil, imagine she has some floating white swords behind her. Hanako smiled and activated her devil trigger. Izumi tried to pin her to the ceiling with her quirk, but it didn't work. Hanako advanced towards Izumi. Izumi launched a floating sword at Hanako while drawing her own. Hanako rushed forward and Izumi blocked her attack. She was launched backwards by the force of the attack. Izumi stood up as gold lightning started to arc around her body. Izumi dashed forwards, using 10% of OFA. Hanako blocked and was pushed back a bit. Hanako, oh, this is going to be fun. Izumi, right back at you. They both pushed off each other and prepared for another attack. Izuku, why are you so afraid? 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗲, I'm not. Izuku, you don't seem to be up for the match, want to give up. 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗲, I know. Izuku, put some confidence into your words, I promise I won't hurt you too bad. 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗲 kept backing away. She tripped on a stone and fell over backwards. Izuku walked forwards and offered a hand. Izuku, come on, let's do this. 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗲, why are you being kind to me? Izuku, everyone deserves a second chance. I'm willing to give you a second chance if you fight me at your fullest. 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗲 took his hand and he pulled her up. He walked down to the other end of the hall and turned. Izuku 3-2-1. 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗲 go. Izuku grinned and rushed forwards. 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗲 blocked with her gauntlets. Her gauntlets were similar to Katsuki's, but hers worked as jet boosters rather than massive bombs. 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗲 had some similar greaves around her calves. She used these to dash around the place, forcing Izuku to always stay on the offensive. Izuku managed to get behind 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗲, only for her to set off an explosion from her back. 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗲 turned around and saw Izuku on the other side of the room. Fear in his eyes. It soon disappeared as a concentrated gaze remained. A similar thing would happen every time she set off an explosion, but each time his recovery was quicker. Until 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗲 set off a full-power explosion in his face, which he took face on. All of the fear seemingly gone. Izuku, level 3 concentration, 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘. Izuku drew the Yamato and stabbed himself with it. Izuku's body turned green and split in two. One form was left glowing green on the ground. The other half formed a man. A tall, slender young man with pale skin and dark green eyes. With chin length, natural white hair with long bangs swept to the left, which sometimes obscures his eye, but his pact with his demons dyes his hair black and covers his entire upper body and his neck in black tattoos. He is wearing a long, open sleeveless 𝗬𝗏𝗃 coat with the sides tied together by strings, in side pockets, and a sewn-in, corset-like vest in the front. He also wears black with a silver chain made up of skulls on the right side of his belt and a fingerless glove on his right hand. The man starts to levitate and summons a black and blue bird and a panther. The bird shoots out lightning while the panther morphs into different shapes. 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗲 barely managed to avoid the brunt of the lightning, but was hit by the panther a couple of times. She managed to fly back with her rocket gauntlets. Izuku rushed forwards, now back in his normal form. Izuku equipped Beowulf and threw a punch at 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗲. 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗲 put her hands up to block the incoming strike. Hanako was laying on the ground with cuts all over her. Izumi walked up and wrapped Hanako with the capture tape. Hanako, humph no fair. Izumi, range beats fists, Hanako. Hanako, 𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗏. I wonder how 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗲 is doing. As if to answer her question, she heard the crackling of lightning and a weird voice that she had never heard before. "I'm taking my time." Izumi rushed down to where her teammate was, only to be slammed into a wall. She looked up and saw Izuku, who had a couple of cuts on his face. Izuku put away Beowulf and pulled out Yamato. Then he heard it, the slight whooshing of a sword flying through the air. He ducked as a white sword flew past where his head was just before. "Izuku, well, I assume you can use that power to boost the power of the swords." "Izumi, correct." Yellow lightning started to flow over Izumi's body. Izuku blocked sword after sword, unable to get close to his sister. Izuku shot some mirage blades at her, but she kept blocking them with her gold, blue and white sword. "Izuku, I should use 𝗬𝗿𝗃𝗃 for this, but I'm a show-off after all." "Izumi, what?" "Hanako, use what now?" "Izuku, 𝗬𝗪𝗍𝗪. A large explosion hit Izuku as he transformed into his SDT form. Katsumi flew up through the floor. Her eyes widened as she saw Izuku. "Izuku, metallic sound 2-on-1. Seems fair for this form." Izuku moved faster than the eye could see. The amount of demonic energy he was outputting helped Izumi and Katsumi to dodge out of his way. Izumi couldn't move him with her telekinesis, and Katsumi's explosions did nothing. Helplessness took over Katsumi's body. She took a half step back, only for a sudden jolt of power to rush through her. She had a quirk advancement. Izuku was suddenly blasted back by Katsumi. Izuku stood up and summoned 𝗬𝗿𝗃𝗃. Katsumi had grown horns and her eyes were glowing red. Her horns had constant explosions coming off them, her hands and feet were now clawed. Izumi fell over from the exhaustion of overusing both of her quirks. Izuku cracked his knuckles. "Izuku, so, now you show me your motivation." "Excellent." Izuku pulled out Beowulf again. "Izuku, sorry, but I win." Izuku rushed forwards and slammed 3 powerful blows into her jaw. She fell back a bit before steadying herself. "Izuku, looks like I may have to go all out." Katsumi, "Wouldn't want it any other way." Izuku, "Hell on earth." Katsumi, "Hellfire Buster." He felt the pain of hell rush over him. Izuku fell down on one knee. He looked up and saw Katsumi teeter before falling over. 𝗬𝗿𝗃𝗃 ran forwards and caught her. "All Might, the hero." "Tinwins." "Izuku, yay." Izuku felt the darkness engulf him, as his head cracked painfully against the floor. "Gil, sorry for the late upload, I had a lot of stuff to work through." Third-person POV, he woke up in the observation room. Something was wrong. He could hear a cacophony of explosions and shouting. In reality, the room was silent, other than the breathing of some sleeping classmates. His heart rate increased rapidly. Short, sharp breaths could be heard. All Might turned around at the sound of a panicked scream. Hanako looked up, fear in her eyes. All Might rushed in. Hanako following suit. He was standing there, back turned to them. "Hanako, Aizu." Izuku turned around, he had entered his SDT form. Hanako activated her 𝗬𝗪𝗃𝗃 form as Izuku flew towards her. She was blasted back, embedded in the wall. Ryoshi stood up and summoned his sword. Ryoshi's blade started to change forms, as if reacting to Izuku's demonic presence. All Might, Detroit Smash. Izuku blocked the hit with one finger. Izuku punched All Might with full force, sending him out of the building. Ryoshi walked up, his new sword resting on his shoulder. "Ryoshi, Izuku. Calm down." Izuku turned at the noise, steam coming out of his mouth. Ryoshi felt his sword charge up. The sword flew out of his hand and into his 𝗧𝗍𝗧. His body started to change, becoming more demonic, like Izuku's. Ryoshi had entered his 𝗬𝗪𝗍𝗪. He decided to not hold back. All the other students had moved to the edges of the room. Izuku and Ryoshi both threw a punch at each other. Their fists connected as the door to the observation room blew off its hinges. Ryoshi saw that some of the teachers had come to help. Izuku and Ryoshi circled each other. A green energy blade suddenly appeared in Ryoshi's shoulder. Izuku was suddenly behind him. Ryoshi sent his energy swords to attack Izuku. Izuku had dodged by jumping away. However, he happened to jump into a high concentration of midnight's gas. Izuku staggered and fell on one knee. Seeing an advantage, Ryoshi pulled out 𝗬𝗏𝗏 and KO'd Izuku. He fell backwards, his SDT form fading away. Ryoshi breathed out, letting his own SDT form fade. Midnight, what happened? Ryoshi, I don't know. Hanako pulled herself out of the wall. Hanako, he had a panic attack. He lost control of himself. Izuku POV, I woke up in the observation room. I saw Hanako watching the remaining fights. I decided to get up and go see her. Clink, I was tied to the bed with quirk suppression 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 I used my raw physical strength to snap the cuffs. Hanako turned around at the noise, so did All Might. All Might got into a fighting stance while Hanako rushed over and gave me a hug. After Hanako released me, I got up and walked over to the screens. I see an All Might-shaped hole in the ceiling. I look at Hanako for confirmation as to what happened. Hanako, panic attack. Izuku, SHT, did I hurt anyone? Hanako, other than All Might? Izuku, thank God. We approach Ryoshi, who waves at us. Ryoshi, it was kind of funny seeing you block a Detroit smash with one finger. Izuku, he's that weak. Ryoshi, yeah, good thing we all chose to limit our power to 5%. Izuku, time skip brought to you by 𝗍𝗓𝗧𝗏 laughing at All Might flying through a ceiling. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟. Let's get down to business. This next task will decide your future. Class 1A, thought, is it another quirk test? 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏, you all need to pick a class representative. Class 1A? Oh good, just normal school stuff. Everyone started calling out, wanting to be chosen as class rep. Tenya. Silence, everyone, please. The class representative's duty is to lead others. It's not something just anyone can do. You must first have the trust of every student in the classroom, therefore the most logical way to fill this position is democratically. We will hold an election to choose our leader. Class 1A, your hand was raised the highest out of all of us. Denki, is this really the best idea? Tsuyu, we've only known each other a few days, how do we know who we can trust? Ijiro, besides, everyone'll just vote for themselves. Tenya, most people will, but that means whoever does receive multiple votes must truly be the most suitable person for the job. It's the best way, right, sir? 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏, do what you want, just decide before my nap's over. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 zipped up his bright yellow sleeping bag and fell to the floor. Tenya, thank you for your trust. This is going to be interesting, I thought to myself. The votes got tallied up. Voting results: Izuku 𝗬𝗏𝗏 5, Eri, Hanako, Ryoshi, Shoka and Momo, Izumi Yagi 3, Izuku, Shoto and Katsumi, Momo Yaoyorozu 2, Tenya Ida, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, Ida, 0 votes. I thought it was going to end this way, but I can't argue with the system I chose. I walked up to the front of my class with my sister. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏, alright, Izuku is the class rep and our deputy is Izumi. Now for a little speech, I thought to myself. Izuku, alright, everybody listen up. I'm not going to be super strict with you all, I'm happy as long as you don't cause any trouble. Katsuki, what the hell? Who voted for this nerd? Izuku, shut it, Katsuki. Katsuki, like hell I will. I just sighed, and walked back to where Eri was sitting and placed a hand on her head. Izuku, wanna go to lunch now? Eri, what are we cooking? Izuku, sorry Snowball, today we get to experience lunch rushes cooking. Eri, oh alright. I could hear Katsuki fuming over me, practically ignoring him. Once Eri and I had gotten our food, we met up with our group and a couple of others. The full group looked to be Eri, Ryoshi, Hanako, Izumi, Shoto and Shoka. I sat down next to Hanako, then Eri squeezed between us, wanting to sit next to us both. I smiled at this. I felt someone lingering behind us, seemingly wanting to join, but too afraid. Izuku, I can feel you standing there, hurry up and come sit down, there's a free spot next to me. Katsumi, Beep, you Izuku, I don't hate you, hurry up and sit down. Katsumi walked forwards and sat down next to me. Her shoulder muscles were tensed and she seemed to fear what I would do. I let out a groan. Izuku, why are you afraid of me? Katsumi, be because of what we did in the past. Izuku, funnily enough, I don't ever remember any of your explosions ever hitting me. Katsumi, you noticed that? Izuku, yes. I only truly figured it out today, after our battle.
𝗬𝗵𝗃𝗃.
Izuku, if this makes any sense, Katsuki's explosions are more destructive, where yours have a more incendiary feel to them. Katsumi, really? Izuku, yeah, your explosions are softer than his. Now loosen up, you're surrounded by friends. Put a smile on that face. Katsumi couldn't help but smile at this comment. Izumi joined in, agreeing with me. Rething, I looked up at the sound of the alarm loudspeaker. Warning, level 3 security breach. All students please evacuate the building in an orderly fashion. And that didn't happen. Everyone rushed to the exit, believing that a villain broke in. I had looked out the window and I saw that it was just the press. I sighed as I walked over to the mob of people, having already told my group to stay there as I will sort this out. I activated my Sin Devil trigger as I walked over to the mob. Izuku, metallic OIU ragtag group of nobodies. If that didn't get the mob's attention, the sheer amount of demonic energy that was leaking out of me did. Izuku, metallic TO think that Japan's highest prestige hero school is trampling each other over a media break-in. Look out the window, you can see them. Sigh now, everybody line up in your classes and wait for your teachers to return, you scum. Mob? Yes, sir. I walked off, letting my SDT form fade. Sigh, next day. Izuku, Hanako, did you dye the ends of your hair green? Hanako blushed when I said this. Hanako, why yes, I'm glad you noticed. You said to add some green into my costume, so instead, I decided to add some green into my everyday life. Izuku, hey, it looks gorgeous on you. Before I could say anything more, Aizawa quietly opened the door. Aizawa, you're getting better at not wasting my time. We'll be heading off campus today. Hey, what are we doing? Aizawa picked up a card and faced it towards us. Aizawa, rescue training. All Might, me and another faculty member will be attending this outing. Izuku, sir, will we be using our hero uniforms? Aizawa, yes, we will be, although, you may not be used to your uniforms yet, so they may drag you down. Now all of you get ready and meet me at the bus in 10 minutes. Aizawa walked out of the classroom. I followed him with Eri behind me. Outside, Izuku, here they come. Aizawa, yep. They're getting better. Izuku, sure thing, took them a lot less time than yesterday did. Izuku to Wanu, much better guys. Aizawa, I was going to say that. Izuku, this bus has an open floor plan, so as long as you don't cause too much chaos, you are free to enter however you see fit. Izuku entered the bus first with Eri, his group following closely behind. Hanako on Eri's right, me on her left, Ryoshi on my left, Izumi on Hanako's right and Katsumi on Izumi's right. I looked forward and saw 𝗬𝗧𝗟𝗘 staring at me, seeming as if she was trying to figure something out. 𝗬𝗧𝗟𝗘, say Izuku, isn't your power and costume similar to that of Virgil's? Izuku, correct 𝗬𝗧𝗟𝗘. I'm surprised that you figured it out so quickly, seeing as I had changed the color to green and all. 𝗬𝗧𝗟𝗘, call me Tsu. All of my friends call me that. Izuku, all right then Tsu. Allow me to explain my power. Basically, I am the successor of Virgil and I am almost as strong as him in his prime. Tsu, that's so cool. Aizawa, everyone were here. We all exited the bus. Some people's jaws dropped at the sight before them. I looked at the entrance and saw a pro hero that I recognized walking out. Hello Class 1A, and welcome to Rescue Training. Achiko, 13. I'm a huge fan of yours. I'm so excited that I get to meet you. 13. Nice to see a fan of mine. Aizawa, where's All Might? Aizawa walked up to 13 and whispered something. 13. Oh dear. Well everyone, let's enter the building. We followed after 13 and entered the USJ. We looked around and saw all of the different zones that they had. There was a city zone, a water zone, a fire zone and a forest zone. Izumi, wow. This place is massive. Izuku, right. Ajiro, you even have fake villains. Aizawa, what? Ajiro, over by the fountain down there. I looked where he was pointing and saw this purple mist thing start to form. Hundreds of villains started to walk out of the portal. The most prominent was a man with sky blue hair, dry skin and hands all over him. I turned to Aizawa and saw him putting on his goggles. Aizawa, those aren't fake villains, those are the real thing. 13. Stay here and protect the students. I'll go and take them out. Gil, so I guess we'll be living with you for a while then. Management, that's fine, so long as you don't cause too much trouble. I'm fine as long as we don't have to live on the street. Izuku POV, I watched Aizawa throw villains around with his capture weapon, whilst erasing their quirks. I jumped down to join him. Aizawa, what are you doing? You're supposed to stay up there with the rest of your classmates. Izuku, I can't let you have all of the fun now, can I? Also, everyone else got warped to different locations. Aizawa, damn it. If you can, let everyone know that they are allowed to use their quirks against these villains. Izuku on it. I sent 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 to go to the announcement room. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃, 𝗬𝗧𝗟𝗘, all students, this is a message from Aizawa. Aizawa has given you all express permission to use your quirks to defend yourselves against the villains. Handyman, All Might was meant to be here. I came here to fight the final boss, not these NPCs. The man with the hands started to scratch his neck. Warp Gate, if you injure some of the kids, maybe he will show up, Shigaraki. Shigaraki, good idea, Kurogiri. Didn't that Sonic kid escape? Kurogiri, yes, he may be on the way to alert All Might, so we may get our fun yet. Izuku, what are you two talking about? I've already finished with these small fry scum. Shigaraki, he beat all of the villains I had gathered. Well, Kurogiri, should I bring out the 𝗨𝗻𝗄? Shigaraki, yes, the one known as Kurogiri opened another portal and released this bird-like monster with an exposed brain. Shigaraki, what? Did you think I was the final boss? This is 𝗨𝗻𝗄, he was made to beat All Might in his prime. I walk over to the 𝗨𝗻𝗄, inspecting it. Shigaraki, 𝗨𝗻𝗄. I moved my body back slightly to avoid its punch. It appeared to be a mindless being that follows orders. I pulled out Beowulf and punched the creature's 𝗧𝗑𝗓. With Katsumi and Izumi, Katsumi POV, we were walking around in a lush forest area. I could feel the auras of some villains in the forest. We avoided all of the villains until we heard a voice over the loudspeaker. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, 𝗬𝗧𝗟𝗘, all students, this is a message from Aizawa. Aizawa has given you all express permission to use your quirks to defend yourselves against the villains. I couldn't help but grin at hearing this. I could feel a fire burning in my 𝗧𝗓. It was growing stronger, just like in that fight with Izuku. But this time, it was different, more refined. I felt this fire flow out over my body as I transformed. Walking forwards to meet a villain who had seen us, I summoned some explosions from my hands. Katsumi, ready Izumi. Izumi, let's do this. Katsumi, Hellfire Tangent. I exploded forwards. Explosions coming off of my back, propelling me forwards. I grabbed the villain by the throat. I moved her explosions from my back to my feet. I flew up to the top of the trees. I used my explosions to start rotating in the air. Katsumi, Hellfire Tangent, 𝗬𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘. I threw the villain at the ground, burying him headfirst in it. I my explosions to my back again. Izumi POV, so, Hellfire Tangent is a form of using her explosions to move around in a constant flow. This allows Katsumi a higher movement speed. Katsumi, stop mumbling and get moving Izumi. Izumi, right. I moved forwards, my set of 6 white swords floating off my back. I dashed forwards, with the swords flowing around me, cutting any who came close. I heard a loud slam in the distance. It could only be the sound of Izuku punching an enemy with his Beowulf. Katsumi, Hellfire Tangent, impact. Katsumi slammed straight into the ground, setting off a huge explosion. I watched in awe as she had only had one night to train with her new quirk, and she seemed to already be doing well with it. Ryoshi, Momo, Jiro, Denki, Mountain Zone, Ryoshi POV, that DMN Portal Menace decided to teleport us all to different locations. Momo, there are villains, everybody stay sharp and try to avoid them. We all regrouped at her location. There was a total of 4 of us. We were about to get ready to run when we heard something over the loudspeaker. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, 𝗬𝗧𝗟𝗘, all students, this is a message from Aizawa. Aizawa has given you all express permission to use your quirks to defend yourselves against the villains. Ryoshi, well, time to play. I summoned a new weapon to play with these villains. I decided to choose one that would allow me to show off my martial arts skills, my triple nunchucks Ryoshi, King Cerberus. I ran around, using the nunchucks to freeze enemies in place. In a few seconds, half of the villains were unconscious. That's when I heard a loud bang and a body flop to the floor behind me. Ryoshi, thanks for the help Momo. Momo, all you. I allowed King Cerberus to transform into a flaming staff. Using this to vault over my enemies and set them on fire. I ducked under a strike and slammed my staff into a villain's head. I then threw the staff up and threw the man at other villains. Momo, Ryoshi, get over here. Denki is going to use his lightning. Ryoshi, tell him to fire it off. I can take it. Momo, all right. Then you hit them. Denki, indiscriminate shock. 3 million volts. I felt the electricity flow over me. I smiled as the electricity tickled. Ryoshi, he short-circuited himself. That's when a villain popped up out of the ground and held his finger to Denki's head. A bunch more villains popped out of the ground. Villain 1. If you move, he dies. In a fraction of a second, I had grabbed the villain and threw him to the water section. Ryoshi, waitee. The villains looked at me shocked. I then allowed my weapon to enter its third form, a lightning-imbued 3-section staff. Spinning around, throwing lightning everywhere, incapacitating any enemy who even tried to get close to me. Momo and Jiro took care of the ones who decided to run. I heard the sound of Izuku punching an enemy with Beowulf. DMN. He must be going up against a strong enemy for me to be able to hear the hit from here. As I was thinking this, I saw a huge explosion go off in the forest. Ryoshi, DMN. She's really gotten good with her new quirk overnight. Middle of USJ, Izuku POV. I looked at the creature that had just took one of my punches at 5%. I started to laugh. Izuku, ha. Now this is something motivating. Shigaraki looked confused as I released 10% of my power and punched again. Still nothing. 20% was still no reaction. Izuku, so it has some form of shock absorption quirk. That doesn't mean that it's immune to slicing. As I say this, I jump back and swap Beowulf with Yamato. Izuku, judgment cut. I set off 3 consecutive judgment cuts, removing the creature's arms and a leg. I watched as it regenerated those limbs. Izuku, so it's one of his creations then. I max out my power to my current limits, 30% in dangerous situations, and activate Sin Devil trigger. I watch as the Nomu twitches in response and starts to grow in size. Izuku, OSHT. So he's managed to find a way to access that place. Aizawa, what do you mean, problem child? Izuku, whoever created this creature has somehow managed to find a way to gain access to the infinite plane of existence. Call it what you like, underworld, hell, demon world, netherworld, whatever. He has somehow imbued this Nomu with the powers of Goliath. I will eat all of you puny mortals. Izuku, Goliath. I shot 3 of my mirage blades on the shoulder of Goliath and walked up to his ear. Izuku, hello, scum. Nice to finally meet you. I hope you pose a challenge. Goliath, puny mortal. You think you can beat the likes of me? Izuku, oh, on the contrary. I slice Goliath's arm off before he throws me away with the other arm. I stand up and summon Doppelganger. We both draw our Yamatos and teleport to Goliath. Shigaraki, 𝗬𝗓𝗄𝗧𝗏, what happened to my Nomu? 𝗬𝗓𝗄𝗧𝗏, I'm not sure, 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗏. I think it had something to do with that boy's awakening. Maybe it was a countermeasure against strong enemies. I sliced a fireball in half, while Doppelganger ran up to Goliath. Goliath grabbed Doppelganger, his arm fully regenerated, and shoved him into his tummy mouth. I saw a streak of red flying towards us. It was Ryoshi in his SDT form. Ryoshi landed next to me. Izuku, Ryoshius that AF motorbike. Ryoshi, why yes it is. Its name is Cavalier. Izuku, why? Why do you have weapons like this? Ryoshi, what can I say, I'm a show-off. With that said, Ryoshi hopped on the motorbike and rode off to Goliath. I ran forwards with him and was surprised when he jumped with the motorbike and it split into 2 weapons. Izuku, what the actual you know what? Never mind. I followed Ryoshi up Goliath. With both of us in our SDT forms, Goliath barely managed to hold his own. Ryoshi was shredding him up with the spiked motorbike wheels while I slashed and used judgment cuts to make sure that Ryoshi didn't get hit. Then out of nowhere, me and Ryoshi got slammed into the ground by a massive sweeping backhand. I got up, my SDT form fading. The same thing happened to Ryoshi. Ryoshi, shall I finish this? Izuku, go ahead. Ryoshi pulled out his twin pistols, only to have one knocked out of his hands by a villain who was still conscious. I kicked him in the head and picked up the fallen gun. Izuku, allow me to help. I sidewalked to where Ryoshi was standing. We stood back to back and I placed my gun on his. Izuku, remember the old catchphrase. Ryoshi, Izuku and Ryoshi, jackpot. The two bullets made their way to Goliath's head. One with a red contrail and one with a green one. Goliath held up his hands to block, but the bullets pierced through both of his arms and out the other side of his skull. The body fell to the ground and started to disintegrate. I tossed Ryoshi's gun back to him as I walked over to Aizawa, who was still laying on the floor. I looked over to where Shigaraki and Kurogiri was, but they were gone. I continued to walk to Aizawa, looking over him to see if he had any injuries. Gladly, his only injury seemed to be some minor eye strain from quirk overuse. Third-person POV, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗍. He seemed confused. All of the villains were unconscious, and Izuku was carrying Aizawa. Izuku, you're late, All Might. All Might, what happened here? Izuku, simple. I beat all of the villains. All Might was even more confused. All Might, is everyone okay? Izuku, everyone has minor injuries, other than 13. I have already called an ambulance to pick her up and take her to the hospital. All Might then heard sirens in the distance. Izuku, do you mind taking 13 to the ambulance? Carefully, I might add, seeing as you are a clumsy buffoon. All Might grunted angrily, but did what he was told. At the end of the day, there were no casualties, other than Goliath. But he would just regenerate in the underworld later. 13 was okay, just some minor lacerations to her back, due to Kurogiri redirecting her black hole back at her. This would not be the last time that Izuku would see the League of Villains. After all, the mysterious Nomu creator had ties to the underworld. That would have to wait. After all, Izuku had to go check on a certain Yakuza leader, with Nizu's permission of course. Gil, found this image. Management. Virgil with a violin. Gil, yes. Management, I'm starting to regret my decision of letting you stay here. Izuku POV, I was walking furiously to Nizu's office. I appeared to be radiating bloodlust, as all of the teachers that tried to stop me backed away after looking into my eyes. Aizawa walked up to me. I grabbed his capture weapon and dragged him with me. Next, I saw Snipe. I grabbed him by the cape and dragged him as well. Snipe to Aizawa, so, you're here too. Aizawa, yep. Snipe, no why. Aizawa, nope. Both pro-heroes dropped to the floor as Izuku held up his hand to knock on Nizu's door. Knock 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 crack. Nizu, come in Izuku. A little bit earlier, Nizu POV. I was sitting in my office, sipping on my tea whilst reading through Shota Aizawa's notes on Aries training. I smiled, thinking of the little girl. If anyone harms her, I will show them a fate worse than death. I took another sip of tea as I heard footfalls outside my door. They stopped with the sound of two bodies hitting the floor. Knock 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 crack. I looked at the fist that had just put a hole in my door. I hope Izuku had a good reason for being this angry. Nizu, come in Izuku. I watched as the hand retracted through the door. The door then opened to reveal Izuku, Shota, and Snipe. Nizu, now, care to tell me why you put a hole in my door? I said this while glaring at the kid. Izuku, Eri told me everything. Now I was curious, what did Eri tell him? Izuku, I will give you the short version. Eri was used as an item for Overhaul to use to get rid of quirks. He kept her in a room with no windows. He constantly, painfully, extracted her BLD to make quirk erasing bullets. The reason why she had bandages on her arms was because of all of the needle scars she had. My smile dropped. Shota and Snipe looked on with fear. Nizu, Malice, and what do you plan to do about it? Izuku, Malice, I plan to wipe the 𝗧𝗍𝗪𝗃𝗃 of the face of the earth. With your permission and help, along with Aizawa and Snipe. 𝗧𝗜𝗧𝗟𝗘, what do you plan to do with overhaul? Izuku and 𝗵𝗃, malice, give him a fate worse than death. 𝗵𝗃, how does the night that the sports festival is on? Izuku, I can work with that. Is it okay if some of my friends help? 𝗵𝗃, I assume those people are Hanako, Ryoshi and Izumi. Izuku, and Katsumi. 𝗵𝗃, so you have forgiven her? Izuku, not fully. But an old friend of mine said that everyone deserves a second chance. 𝗵𝗃, well, that settles it. After the sports festival, get your friends and meet me at. I will have weapons and gear set up for us. Izuku, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, do you have guns I could borrow for the night? 𝗧𝗵𝗲, why do you want 𝗵𝗃? Sorry to interrupt, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, but I think that Izuku will need a gun if we are trying to go under the radar. A flashy quirk like Izuku's would be easily recognizable, especially so soon after the sports festival. I grabbed a Glock 18C from under my desk and placed it on top. Everyone was shocked, other than Izuku. Shota, Nezuki, do you have a gun? 𝗵𝗃, I visited America a while back, and let's say that their love for guns has rubbed off on me. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, why did I know that this was the answer? I pulled out a gun from my drawer. 𝗵𝗃, I could get a licensed sidearm for you. Izuku, here are your options. That first one, Glock 18C chambered in 9x19mm. That one I pulled out just now is the Desert Eagle chambered in 50 Action Express. But I think you would prefer this third one I have. I grabbed my third sidearm from my desk's bottom drawer. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, 𝗵𝗃, how do you have this? 𝗵𝗃, the Smith & Wesson 500 bone collector, chambered in 500 SNW Special. Glock 18C Desert Eagle 50 AE Smith & Wesson 500 bone collector. Izuku, oh uncle. You know that I love guns almost as much as you. Shota raised his eyebrows at this. Izuku, what? Like I would tell anyone. Wouldn't want people to think I'm a quirkless murderer. 𝗵𝗃, I swear. Katsuki. Izuku, yep. Shota, he's such a pain. Always yelling die. I can't handle him without a coffee. I raised my eyebrow at this. Shota, did I say? I meant 20. Izuku, how long would it take you to get me the bone collector, uncle? 𝗵𝗃, I have some connections in the American and Japanese governments, so maybe 3 days. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, 3 days. It took 3 weeks for me to get mine. 3 weeks. 𝗵𝗃, well now you know. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, know what? 𝗵𝗃, if you ever need help getting a gun, I'm your rat. But. Principal of UA. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, kind of wish I have a sniper. 𝗵𝗃, which one do you want? Seeing as I am putting in an order for Izuku, I might as well put one in for you. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 looked at me, probably with surprise. I don't know, with that mask of his. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, really? Thanks 𝗵𝗃. 𝗵𝗃, Shota. Do you want one too? Shota, no thanks 𝗵𝗃. Zashi would kill me. 𝗵𝗃, fair enough. Now, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, what sniper do you want? 𝗧𝗵𝗲, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 5000 chambered in 6. 5x47mm Lapua. 𝗵𝗃, excellent choice. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, oh, also, could you get it in full black as well? 𝗵𝗃, that's no problem. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 5000. Izuku, hey 𝗵𝗃. 𝗵𝗃, Izuku, what gun will you be using? 𝗵𝗃, the Barrett M82. Chambered in 50 BMG. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, that's sand anti-material rifle. Why do you have one? 𝗵𝗃, a gift from the number 3 hero in America. His hero name was Marksman, but all of the villains called him the Gun Devil. I pressed a button that was underneath the table, and a wall rose out of the floor. I walked over and put the parts together on my desk. 𝗵𝗃, Izuku, one day you should come over to my home and we can go shoot some guns at the firing range if you want. Izuku, that sounds like a lot of fun, uncle. 𝗵𝗃, remember what I said about this gun, Izuku? Izuku, 𝗵𝗃 and Izuku, this is an anti-material rifle. It's not chambered for nuance. Barrett M82 times skip B2IB planning out the mission. Izuku POV, I walked back to my dorm room. Classes were already finished. That's why I had gone to 𝗵𝗃 to talk about what Eri had told me. I swear, Chisaki, I will find you, even if I have to hunt you to the ends of this earth. As I entered the dorms, I saw Ryoshi and Eri preparing some stuff for Katsudon. Izuku, Katsudon. Ryoshi, yep, wanna come help. Izuku, Yes. As I walked to Ryoshi, Momo grabbed my arm. Momo, Izuku, please stop throwing knives around while cooking, it's unsafe. Izuku, sorry Momo, can't guarantee anything. I smile at her and walk over to the kitchen. We started to cook the 𝗧𝗃. Ryoshi was in charge of cooking the chicken, while I prepared the rice. Everyone had started to come out of their rooms. They were all watching Ryoshi and I cook. I can't lie, watching us throw knives around does seem to intrigue people. Ryoshi grabbed the pan of chicken, turned around to bring it over and slipped, dropping the pan. This pan happened to be heading straight for Eri. I moved over to Eri, catching the pan by the metal. Izuku, are you alright Eri? Eri, why yes papa. Izuku good. Momo, Izuku. Izuku, yeah, what's up Momo? Momo, your hand. I only now hear the sound of sizzling. I walk over and put the pan down next to the sink. I watch as the burns heal themselves immediately. Denki, how do you not feel anything from that? Izuku, long story. I'll tell you all once dinner is ready. Ryoshi, sorry man, are you good? Izuku, yeah, it's fine. Let's finish the meals. Ryoshi, on it. We finished the meals, this time there weren't any more slip-ups. Once the food was handed out, I decided to tell everyone about my pain tolerance. Izuku, so, you must be wondering why I have a high pain tolerance, right? Most of the people around the table said yes, other than the people who already knew. Izuku, story time. I was bullied for most of my life. I will not say who it was, as I don't want to ruin their chances of being a hero. I believe everyone deserves a second chance. But this bully and his group used their quirks to physically abuse me from since I was 4, up until 10 months before the UA entrance exam. Mina, that's horrible. Ijiro, yeah, not manly at all. Momo, why did they do this? You have such a powerful quirk. Izuku, yeah about that. It's not a quirk of, what? Izuku, my quirk is the direct power of someone that was passed down to me. The sword strength. And all of the other things that come with it aren't mine. And I didn't get my quirk until 10 months before the entrance exam, so I was quirkless. Hanta, well, whose was it? Izuku, do any of you all know of the old-time devil hunters? Denki, the DMC crew. Izuku, yes. Everyone nodded their heads in agreement, showing me that they knew. Izuku, so in their last fight against Demon King Urizen, one of the members, who goes by V, turned out to be the human half of Urizen Denki, then the two combined back into one person, resurrecting Virgil. Izuku, we have a fanboy I see. Denki, can you blame me? Izuku, as a fellow fan no. So now that's the backstory basically. You're saying that you have the powers of Virgil. Izuku, bingo. Everyone's jaw dropped at this. Hanako walked up to me and wrapped me in a hug. Hanako, and I am the direct descendant of Virgil and Nero. Ryoshi, I'm Dante's descendant. Denki, I think we should call your group the new DMC. Izuku, wait a second. Denki, raise your hands if you agree. I looked around in despair as everyone other than Katsuki raised their hands. Denki, that settles it then. Izuku, sigh alright. Technically we can't be the new DMC due to there being Namareedmans. I let the sentence trail off. Remembering the Nomu turning into Goliath. Izuku, right, so our group of 8 are the new DMC Denki 8. Izuku, Ryoshi, Hanako, Eri, Izumi, Shoto, Shoka, Katsumi and me. I looked at the pure shock and rage on Katsuki's face as he turned to face his sister, who was sitting with Mina and Momo. Katsuki, why you? I snapped my fingers, suddenly standing next to Katsuki. Izuku, choose your next words carefully. Katsuki, you quirkless 𝗵𝗃, I socked Katsuki in the jaw before he could finish what he was saying. Izuku, watch your language, Kaken. I said his nickname with as much hatred and malice as I could. Most of the people in the room could figure out by now who the bully was. Tenya, stop fighting, this isn't fit for hero students. Izuku, sorry Tenya, but he kind of deserved it. I had to deal with him for 10 years, it's only fair. Katsuki, I will kill you Deku. Izuku, same old threats, blah blah blah. Kill you Deku this, quirkless nobody that. At least be a bit more creative and make up a new insult, instead of recycling the old ones. Third-person POV, Katsuki was shocked by this. Izuku would usually cower away from his insults. Where did this confidence come from? Then he remembered something. The only time that useless Deku showed fear was when that pan went flying at the little girl. Izuku saw Katsuki's eyes dart towards Eri. As I opened my mouth to speak, Katsuki ran over and grabbed Eri's head. The little girl screamed in fear. Izuku stopped dead in his tracks, fear on his face. Everyone was silent with shock. Katsuki, not so confident now, 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗍𝗪. Katsuki let off a small explosion next to the girl's head, making her cry. Suddenly the room went cold. Everyone looked over at the Todoroki twins, but it wasn't their doing. They looked back at Izuku and everyone froze. His eyes were red and steam was coming off his body. Izuku, bloodlust, now you've done it. Izuku summoned Yamato and shot a mirage blade into Katsuki's hand, making him scream in pain and drop Eri, who ran over to Hanako. Izuku teleported behind Katsuki and was about to stab him when Ryoshi flew forward and punched Izuku in the head with Balrog, knocking him out. Ryoshi then turned around and kicked Katsuki upside the head. Katsuki flew at least a foot in the air, before slamming into the ground. Ryoshi looked at the class and shrugged. Ryoshi, that's what he gets for messing with Izuku's daughter. Everyone gulped. Now Izuku had proved his point from the first day, and everyone feared and respected him more. Eri, is Papa okay? Hanako, who was still holding Eri, replied. Hanako, yes he is, little snowball. Eri, I'm scared. Hanako's eyes widened at this. Eri had called her mama. Hanako smiled while hugging her daughter tighter. Hanako, it's okay little one, he can't hurt you anymore. Izawa burst through the front door of the dorms, his eyes glowing and his capture weapon readied. He looked at the scene in front of him and sighed. Izawa, what did Katsuki do this time? Ryoshi, he threatened Eri. Izawa, he did what now? Hanako, he grabbed Eri and used her as a hostage to scare Izuku. Izuku snapped and almost killed him. Izawa, understandable. Ryoshi, you grab Izuku, I'll grab Katsuki and we will head to Recovery Girl. Ryoshi nodded and picked up Izuku and followed Izawa to the medical wing. POV, Shigaraki, sir, what happened to turn that Nomu into a giant? Yes. That was a countermeasure intended to make sure that if the creature couldn't beat All Might as it would get stronger and kill him anyway. Kurogyri, however, that failed. How? Shigaraki, all for one, there was a green-haired boy with a katana, and a white-haired boy with a red trench coat and a motorbike who easily defeated the creature. All for one. I see, so we have a new generation of DMC members then. No matter, I will make stronger Nomus. Kurogyri, train Tamura some more while I go and make more Nomus. With this, I disconnected from the call. I sighed. I turned around to talk to my co-conspirator, you could say. All for one. Hey, do you have any stronger demons I could put in my Nomus? That's no way to speak to a king. All for one. Sorry, Lord Mundus, Prince of Darkness. Mundus, now, let's see if we can't get some more demons that want to be free. Gil, man, there's a huge crowd here. Management. Yes, there is, but at least we get to see these new heroes in action. N, always looking on the bright side. Management, shut it in. Or I swear I will make you run into the arena during a fight. N, you wouldn't dare. Management, try me. Gil, stop arguing. Here they come. Izuku POV, we walked out to the sound of a roaring crowd. Hanako, holy CRP. Izawa wasn't kidding, everyone is here. I just nodded and continued as I walked out and saw people everywhere. There were heroes, civilians, and important businessmen. But 3 people caught my eye. 2 of them were arguing while one was staring at us. 2 of them were men and the other was a woman. Ryoshi tapped me on the shoulder and I looked over at him. Ryoshi, who are you looking at? Izuku, those 3 up there. They were gone. There were different people in their seats, as if they were never there. Gil, CRP, he noticed us. Management, let's get out of here and, on it. Reality correction. Ryoshi, which 3? Izuku, never mind. I was just seeing things. Ryoshi looked at me with a confused look on his face. Before he could say anything, There was a loud cracking noise. Midnight, everyone, pay attention. Nope. I started to look around the stadium again, looking to see if I could find anyone I knew. A skinny blonde man caught my eye. He was sitting next to a green-haired woman. Ah, so Toshinori and Inko are here. I look around the competitors again and smile. Katsuki wasn't here. Flashback, Katsuki POV. I woke up in an unfamiliar bed. I saw Aizawa sitting next to me. Katsuki, what happened? I feel like I was hit by a truck. Aizawa, not far off. Do you remember what happened? I thought for a second, then tried to sit up. Clink, the sound of 𝗧𝗵𝗃 startled me out of my thoughts. I started to roll around, trying to escape from the 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗲. Katsuki, what the hell is this? Did you do this? I grabbed onto the 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗲 and activated my quirk. But nothing happened. I looked at Aizawa, but his quirk wasn't active. He walked over and took the sheet off of me, and I saw the 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗲. They were quirk-canceling cuffs. Aizawa, you are staying here until after the sports festival. You're lucky. Nizu only gave you a warning because you never physically injured the girl. Next time he won't be so lenient. Izuku, far, where am I? I heard that Deku's voice and started to strain against my restraints again, trying to break free and get that worthless nerd. Katsuki, let me out. Izuku, oh, he's here. Aizawa walked over to the curtained-off area and moved the curtain away, revealing Izuku chained to his bed with quirk-canceling 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗲. Aizawa, Izuku, don't even try and use your quirk to escape. Izuku, funny thing, Aizawa. Izuku used his physical strength and ripped the cuffs apart. He stood up and walked back to the dorm. Izuku, I'm fine, Aizawa. I won't attack him unless he does something stupid again. That DMN nerd. He thinks he can take me. Is he delusional? That quirkless idiot can he even protect his own daughter properly? Suddenly I felt tired. Aizawa, sorry kid, can't have you shouting up the place. Sleep tight. End of flashback. Izuku POV, we all walked over to a hallway that led out of the stadium. Izuku, Ryoshi, what's happening? I wasn't paying attention. Ryoshi, of course you weren't doing an obstacle course. Izuku, sounds fun. Midnight 3-1-Geo. With a crack of the WHP, we all rushed into the hallway. We immediately got frozen. Shoto, sorry guys, but we are going to win this round. Izuku, in your dreams. Ryoshi, Hanako and I broke out of the ice. The Todoroki twins legged it while we freed Katsumi and Izumi and followed. We also saw Momo ahead. She created a cannon like she did in the aptitude test, and shot it at a 0-pointer, immediately disabling it as it was a headshot. Gil, this is the design that I am going for with Momo's suit. She's not wearing it now, but I just got reminded now. I looked at my group and grinned. Izuku, race ya. I didn't wait for a response and immediately sprinted away. I heard hey from Hanako. I grinned at Momo as I ran past her, closely followed by Ryoshi, then Hanako, Izumi and Katsumi. The next obstacle was a tightrope challenge that the Todoroki twins had already passed. I shrugged and activated SDT and just flew over the pit. I flew up next to the Todoroki twins as they were using their ice to fly over the minefield. I flew past them with a big grin on my face as I was ahead of them and Ryoshi. I had this race in the bag, or so I thought. I flinched as I heard a loud explosion and saw Katsumi speed past me. I was wide-eyed as she passed the finish line in first. I was close behind her in second, but still, where did the speed come from? I saw her laying on the ground, breathing strong, not seeming to be able to take air in. She was winded and was scared about not being able to breathe. I rushed over to her. Izuku, hey Katsumi. Look at me. Copy what I do, okay? I grabbed her hands. Izuku, now breathe in slowly and then out. She copied my breathing and soon calmed down. The rest of the group was here by now. I stood up and pulled her up. Izuku, you okay now? Katsumi, yeah. Thanks, Izuku. I was so scared. I couldn't breathe. Her hands were shaking. She had fear in her eyes. Izuku, hey, look at me. There you go. You're safe now. I could tell that there was another reason for her fear of not being able to breathe, but I'll ask her after the festival. Midnight congratulated us on our positions. Next was a cavalry battle. Midnight explained the rules and we all made the teams. Gil, sorry guys, I'm going to skip the cavalry battle. I will put an updated bracket in. After the cavalry battles, we got some time to rest in the break rooms. Due to safety precautions, 𝗵𝗲 decided to build a private break/lobby area for the students to rest in and provided some TVs to watch the rounds. The TV currently showed us the bracket of the first round. Round 1, Battle 1. Izuku Sparta vs Hitoshi Shinso Battle 2. Shoto Todoroki vs 𝗵𝗃𝗃 will be skipped. Battle 3. Izumi Yagi vs 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 Shizaki Battle 4. Ryoshi Sparta vs Tenya Ida Battle 5. Mina Ashido vs Hanako Sparta Battle 6. Momo Yaoyorozu vs 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 will be skipped. Battle 7. Ijiro Kirishima vs 𝗬𝗧𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗧 will be skipped. Battle 8. Katsumi Bakugo vs Ochiko Uraraka Gil. Same as canon fights will be skipped, sorry for the inconvenience. I just don't want to rewrite fights that are already the same. I will try to find videos of the fights. I looked at the first match inside. This may be difficult. I don't know how this guy's quirk works, or what it was. I was sitting in the waiting room for the first match while my opponent was introduced to the crowd. I heard my name and walked out of the door. Everyone cheered as I walked onto the field. Midnight, are you ready? We both nodded. When the WHP cracked, I casually walked forwards. Hitoshi, why do you want to be a hero? Izuku, to prove to 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘 Hitoshi, walk out of the arena. Third-person POV. Izuku walked towards the edge of the arena. People were confused by what he was doing. Suddenly, a massive burst of demonic energy erupted from Izuku, breaking Hitoshi's hold on him. Izuku, neat trick. Izuku summoned Yamato to hand. Hitoshi, ugh, wow, you have such a powerful quirk, you are already set up to be a hero. Izuku, seems unfair huh? Hitoshi, what? Izuku, seems unfair that I have a more powerful quirk than you, right? That's what you are thinking. Hitoshi, yeah, so what? It's true. Izuku, newsflash, I only got this quirk 10 months before the entrance exam. Hitoshi, what? Izuku, I was bullied for not having a quirk, I was in the same boat for a while. Hitoshi looked at Izuku as he walked up to him. Izuku POV. Izuku, your quirk is so cool. Imagine what you could do with it. You could stop hostage situations with a single question. Hitoshi, but my quirk is villainous. Izuku, my quirk is the same as a person who was a villain. But here I am. There is no such thing as heroic or villainous quirks. People who think otherwise are quirkist. Hitoshi stared at me and smiled. Hitoshi, huh? Thank you, Izuku. You have no idea how much that meant to me. Izuku, I'm just here, doing my job. Friends. I held out my hand to him, which he took. Hitoshi, friends. He then turned around and walked out of the ring. Hitoshi, I have lots to learn. Thanks for enlightening me, Izuku. Next year, I will beat you. Izuku, I'm counting on it. Midnight, aw, that's so sweet. Izuku Sparta wins. I turned around and walked out of the arena, back to the waiting room. I sat down with my group, who congratulated me, and we watched the next round. I knew that Shoto had crazy ice power, but this isn't what I thought they meant. Half of the arena was frozen. I could hear Uncle Enji and Auntie Ray cheering for him. Enji, that's my boy. Ray, that's my son. Show them the power of ice. I laughed at their reactions. Must be great to have supportive parents. I looked over at Shoka, who was a bit down as she didn't win the cavalry battle. I walk up and put a hand on her shoulder. Izuku, hey, don't look so down, you did great. I'm sure you will win next year. Shoka smiled at this and nodded her thanks. I smiled at her and walked back over to Hanako. We sat down on the couch together, my arm around her shoulders and her head resting on my shoulder. Shoka was sitting on the couch to the left of us. Ryoshi was on the right couch, alone as Izumi had gone to prepare for her match. I watched as Katsumi sat down next to Shoka. The two started talking. I noticed how close Katsumi was sitting to Shoka. Katsumi noticed me staring, so I grinned at her. She nervously smiled back, and continued to talk with Shoka. Katsumi's arm was resting on the couch back behind Shoka, but I saw the arm moving closer to Shoka. Shoka jumped when she felt an arm wrap around her. She looked at Katsumi, who was red in the face. Katsumi started apologizing and pulled her arm away, only for Shoka to grab it and put it back. Katsumi's eyes widened as Shoka leaned into her embrace. She looked over Yomi, blushing. I gave her a thumbs up. I looked over at Ryoshi, who was fiddling with his guns. Izuku, oi Ryoshi. Ryoshi, Izuku, she has more ball than you. Hurry up and confess to my sister already. This earned a laugh from Shoka and Katsumi. I felt Hanako shaking, trying to hold back her laughter. Ryoshi, fine. I'll go do it after her round. Izuku, speaking of, there she goes now. Izumi POV. I walked out onto the field, hearing the roaring crowd. I smiled. I looked at my opponent for this round. She had green hair, seemingly made of vines. Ibara Shiozaki her name was. Midnight, are both of you ready? Izumi, yep. I did some neck stretches while Ibara nodded to Midnight's question. Midnight, she cracked her WHP and I was off. I activated OFA at 5% and blasted forwards, surprising the girl, who seemed to be praying. She used her hair as a shield, which forced me to dodge over. I landed on the other side and used my telekinesis to lift her up. She shot her vines at me. I dropped her and used my telekinesis to form an invisible shield around me. I rushed forwards with 10% OFA and punched her vine shield. She was blasted back, but stopped just before the line as she used her vines to pin herself in place. I tugged her towards me, before punching her again. Izumi, momentum reversal. I used my telekinesis to add extra power to the punch, sending her flying out of the ring. I grabbed her with my telekinesis and placed her gently on the ground. Midnight, Izumi Yagi wins. The crowd cheers at my victory. I ignore the sounds of my father cheering from the crowd. Izumi, great work Ibara. Ibara, you were an excellent opponent. You never got cocky, an excellent child of God. I smiled at her. Izumi, I have an idea of something you could do with your quirk. If you sent the vines underground while you had the shield up, you could use it as a sneak attack. Ibara, I never thought of that. It seems that God has blessed you with amazing wisdom too. Izumi, thanks Ibara. We both walked back to the lobby area to rest. I saw Ryoshi standing by the entrance. I walked over to him. Before I could get to him, I was hit with a massive headache and started to fall. I was caught by Ryoshi. Ryoshi, wrap your arms around my neck, I'll take you back. I followed his request as he picked me up bridal style and carried me back to the room. He placed me on the couch and walked off. I looked over and saw that Izuku had his arm around Hanako while they were sitting down. I also saw Katsumi and Shoka in the same position. I smiled and gave them a thumbs up. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my head, gently pulling my head back. I let out a sigh of relief as something cold was placed on my forehead. I thanked Ryoshi as he sat down next to me. I felt Ryoshi's head move close to my ear. I gasped in surprise at the feeling of his breath. He then whispered into my ear. Ryoshi, whisper, I love you Izumi, I have for a while now. He then wrapped his arm around me and I rested my head against his shoulder, surprised by the confession. I smiled and was probably red in the face. But I was happy, the happiest I have ever been.